Welcome, everybody, to the SoxProspects.com podcast, the web's number one source for information on the Boston Red Sox from top to bottom, from Fort Myers to Worcester, across the Pike to Fenway, and all stops in between. Thank you for listening. And we do mean from Fort Myers to Worcester and across the Pike to Fenway. My name is Chris Hatfield. I'm the executive editor of Sox Prospects, and I'm joined, as always, by our director of scouting, Ian Kundle. Ian, it appears that somehow most of us escaped sunburn and just general damage from Fort Myers. Have you come back from our trip to spring training as unscathed as you appear?
Yeah, no, I'm in good shape. It was a fun trip, very productive. Saw way more pitchers than I think I've ever seen before in spring training, which was very good.
You were there for a good week, man.
Yeah, it was fun. That was money. It was well worth it. And yeah, just got to see a lot of new guys, some pop-up guys as the usual. It was a fun overall camp. It was good to kind of feel like a normal spring training for the first time in a few years.
Yeah, and actually shout out too, because there was like one last vestige of the COVID era in that fans were not allowed out back to the backfields for the afternoon games. They could go in the morning for workouts. They could not stay for the games. Shout out to our dude Alex Spear, who looks like he basically single-handedly got that fixed based on what I saw on Twitter from someone who was like at the park. So shout out to him. It seems like that was just kind of like inertia that was still in place. But that is now fixed and you can go to the backfields. So next year, back in business. But at any rate, always great to get down there. Always good to see some baseball, talk some baseball with folks we always see down there from within, without the organization. Our friends, with the club, friends outside the club. Always great to get down there. And of course, we can do that because of your support. If you listen to the show, you can support us several different ways. And so many of you have done that. I want to say a big thank you. That's how we're able to do things like go down to Fort Myers. And you can support us by just telling a friend, tell your neighbor, tell the guy next to you on the backfields when you're watching the game, or girl, or child, man, woman, children, whoever's standing near you, tell them about the podcast. Tell the person you just met who comes up to you and says, hey, when's the new episode dropping? Which happened to me once when I was out on the backfield. So that was interesting. But yeah, spread the word. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever it is that you listen to the show. And of course, you can support us on patreon.com/SoxProspects, as we always say. So various ways you can support the show. Ian, without further ado, let's just get into it, man, because we've got a lot to get into. We've got news and we've got camp. Let's start with the news. And really at this point, it's mostly just about setting the roster, because as that, the minor league rosters, honestly, we'll talk about those probably next episode, because we'll at least know Worcester. The next episode, we'll probably have an idea of who's going where otherwise. And they actually, like, you can tell some of the guys have headed up to Worcester already, who are either going to be assigned there potentially or, at a level near it. It's not necessarily finalized, but their season starts this coming Friday. So the Worcester Red Sox are, for the most part, already in Worcester.
The AAA guys, as you said, are already
most of them are gone.
Up. Yeah, well, no, they left on their last games were Saturday.
Right, the final,
and Saturday the 25th. And now, so right now, you just have double A and lower still down there, except and their seasons don't start until like the 6th,
the week after,
or the 5th. So those guys are still in camp until the 31st, which is so until the end of the week. So that's pretty interesting.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Red Sox roster over the next few days, because I feel like we know most of it, but there's like two spots that are just like, I don't know.
Today put a lot of into focus. But first, this is Chris and Ian in the future interrupting your regularly recorded podcast to add an addendum. I guess it might be a predendum. I don't know what it'll be. But since we recorded this on Monday night, the Red Sox on Tuesday made some decisions about the hitter side of the roster. They have optioned Jarren Duran to Worcester, and it looks like they are going to purchase the contract of Raimel Tapia and put Adalberto Mondesi on the 60-day IL, which I guess if we'd known that was a possibility, then the whole how do you get Tapia on the 40-man roster thing would have become a lot simpler. But
yeah,
it is what it is.
It is what it is, but as we kind of talked about, like, if they're putting someone on the 60, I have no issue with it. My point simply when I was talking about how I don't really think he's that stands. But
if you're getting rid of someone,
it makes it like it's harder for me to justify if you're getting rid of someone. Now they aren't getting rid of anyone, and like it's just funny to me or it's interesting to me that I wonder what changed, and I have to think it's all the pitcher injuries is what changed.
Yeah,
like when they were saying, we're not going to 60 to anyone. I'm guessing they didn't think Wyatt Mills would get hurt. They didn't think Jolie Rodriguez was going to get hurt.
I think that was before both of them got hurt.
That's what I thought so too. Yeah, so it's
maybe it was because it was at the time.
It was after Rodriguez, but before Mills.
Yes,
but even with Mills, having Mills changes the whole like numbers game too.
Yeah,
so,
if you have Mills bumps Ort to AAA,
or probably DFA.
Or DFA, right?
Or exactly. Or maybe it bumps Kelly to AAA or whatever. But like,
is there something to be said here, Ian, about the fact that like, we've talked internally about like, Ryan Scherf, for example, right? Like, what is the purpose of Ryan Scherf if not to be a fungible lefty who comes up for the short term when you need him, like Silvino Bracho last year, and who was the other guy they brought up? The guy that was like they used him as a bullpen game starter a bunch of times.
Phillips Valdez?
No, someone else. They had another one of those guys who they brought up for like a week and a half and then DFA'd him. I'll figure it out while
Domingo
you talk.
Germán?
No,
not Domingo. Domingo Tapia?
No, that was a couple of years ago. Right? Yeah.
I mean, it's going to bug me. I need to know now, so I'm going to look. You're saying he got called up in the middle of the season?
Yeah, I can get it in 2 seconds. But
Tyler Danish? No, it wasn't him.
No.
Um,
Garcia? No, what the hell?
What is his great name? Radio?
It is just
Austin. It wasn't Austin Davis, I'm guessing.
No. It was a guy who started the year in AAA, was like sneaky good, and then they brought him up and they had to DFA him. Like I think he came up for like the Toronto series or something. It's not Juris Familia. Michael Feliz.
Oh, Michael Feliz, yeah.
Michael Feliz,
yeah. Feliz, I remember, yeah.
Yeah, Feliz and Brock. Yeah, Feliz came up in...
Yeah, he sucked.
He came up for 1 game in mid-July. Pitched 3 1/3 innings on July the 8th. And then you have Bracho, who got called up and didn't even pitch before he got traded.
Yeah, but I think the difference to me there is that those guys are right-handed and like legitimately the definition of fungible. Yeah. Whereas if you look, they just like they clearly have made an emphasis, and it's actually something I kind of thought of acquiring left-handed AAA depth, which obviously I think we've talked about a lot. Like if you get below AA, it's literally all right-handed pitchers, like in Greenville projected right now.
Yeah.
So you look this offseason and they went out and got Cam Boozer, Skylar Arias for double, who we have projected for AA, and then AAA they went out and got Joe Jocks, Matt Dermody, Sheriff, and re-signed Mosqueda. So it seems like adding left-handed depth was like a kind of a thing.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely something they targeted, no question.
And I just think that they don't want to burn Sheriff for 10 days at the beginning of the season. Like if it's if it's June, whatever. Like I just think that they want to have him around for the long haul to kind of see what he is and then make a decision versus having to like DFA him after 10 days.
That's fair. I can dig that.
Because I think it's also that like they're confident the guys coming back will be back soon. Whereas, maybe later in the season there's more uncertainty, or Jolie Rodriguez has a setback and is out another month or something, or Zach insert player X from the bullpen also gets hurt. Like I think they want to keep that flexibility, whereas now they know that whoever is up in that role is going to be up for the short term. Because Whitlock is going to be back, the 11th or something, and Bayo's going to be probably
12th, 2 weeks
behind that, I would guess.
That's what they've said.
That. Yep. So he'll be back by late April, like April 24th, around there.
Or like a couple starts behind that, so it might be like a week and a half.
So yeah, it's probably like April 20th to 24th, something in that range. That they don't want to burn Sheriff in such a short, outing.
One thing I thought of today, Ian, is I don't even know if they can do this. If they can just option Whitlock. Can they just option him? Because I think he was hurt before that deadline, right?
Oh, so you're saying that he doesn't have to come back a certain day?
Oh, but it would still be 15 days.
Yeah, no, it would still, that wouldn't matter.
Still 15 days.
Because he wasn't optioned on like the first day.
Because he hasn't been optioned yet. Yeah, because he hasn't been optioned yet.
Okay, he's going to go on the DL. Bayo will go on the DL, and they'll be back.
Yeah. Anyway, all right.
But
so
back to Duran and Tapia.
back to Duran and Raimel Tapia. I mean, look, I think it's just a matter of keeping as much depth as possible. Like, I don't think I wouldn't feel comfortable arguing with you and telling you you were wrong, arguing one or the other is a better option in the major leagues right now.
Right, like, yeah, I mean, now, again,
Right.
knowing that we can 60 the guy, I'd rather have Duran playing every day because I still think there's a chance that he's like a 50. Whereas Tapia, we know
You
what
think
he
a
is.
fifth, like as a 90th percentile outcome, he's a 50.
Like, and he could be an everyday guy, like a
Yep.
low end everyday player, or like, a second division regular. Like, I still think there's a chance with that. Whereas Tapia, like, I'm fine if he gets, as we kind of talked about yesterday, and part of the issue is I don't know how he's going to find playing time. Like, maybe he gets like 8 at bats a week, 6 at bats a week. And like, I'd rather not have Duran in that role. I'd rather him be down, in Worcester getting, playing 5 days a week, 6 days a week.
Well, here's the interesting question: is who's the backup center fielder? Is it Tapia?
Yeah, I guess Tapia. Who's
is
not
it
a really
Refsnyder?
Defender.
Like,
I don't know. Do you know who it probably is? It's Kike Hernandez.
Yeah, but then I guess Yu Chang started.
Yeah.
Yu Chang is the backup center fielder.
No, Yu Chang would play shortstop.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Is it makes Yu Chang the backup center fielder, right? Like he's the backup player who plays when Duvall is not playing center field. Is what I mean. Like he pushes Kike to center.
That's fine. I mean, Chang's a fine defender at shortstop. He's not good.
But I'm saying he's not good. Like I would almost rather play.
I would not. Tapia is not a good defender.
Refsnyder in center.
No, I mean, I genuinely think it's just going to be Kike Hernandez in center. I feel like we don't need to overthink it because Tapia. Did he even play that much center field last year?
No, I mean, I'm not saying he's a good center fielder. I'm just saying that for one game you start Yu Chang at short. I mean, now we know Mondesi's probably not coming back till the end of May.
Yeah, Tapia played 8. No, he played 8 complete games in center field last year.
Yeah, no, that sounds right.
So that sounds right. He did not play a lot of center field.
Didn't Refsnyder play a little bit of center last year?
I remember. So Tapia had more appearances. Like he had more than that, obviously, because he played a bunch of like partial games, but he only had 8. Like he had way more. He played way more in right and left field.
I mean, look, let's put it this way: if Duvall goes down, they're calling up Duran.
Yeah, 100%. Refsnyder played 9 complete games at center field, 14 in right field, and 2 in left field. So he actually played more, even though he played like significantly less in center than Tapia did. But I guess the issue though with that is, again, it's like if you're giving Duvall the day off, it's not going to be against a lefty, so Refsnyder's not going to play. So it's like it almost, I guess we probably do see Tapia out there decent some of the time too, because for that reason, like the same logic, you would probably want Chang playing against a left-handed pitcher. So like I feel like Chang, actually thinking about it, I feel like have they played Duvall in right or left at all this spring? No.
He's played nothing but center.
Because wouldn't it make sense for like if Chang's going to play, it's against the lefty, and you bump Kike to center and move Duvall to right or left
field? I think
field?
they don't want to move Kike Hernandez around a lot.
It could be that he's
the regular shortstop.
It honestly, you could be right there, and then it's just going to be Refsnyder or like Tapia gets 1 or 2 games a week in center field. But I mean, either way, I just don't think he's going to play very much. And and if he is, like, he'll be fine. He's going to not walk. He's going to strike out 20% of the time. He'll probably hit like 250. It's going to be fine. I do think that part of Red Sox fans' viewpoints of Tapia stems from him absolutely destroying them last season.
Right.
And he's just not that as good as he looked against the Red Sox pitching staff last year.
Right. That's
fair.
He's like
I think the other corollary of the Duran thing is kind of something that we talked about yesterday too, is like Rafaela starting in Double-A makes a lot of sense. And it's kind of
so Cedon Rafaela is going to start in Double-A.
It's something
got reported today. Gabriel Starr.
We actually had it. We had it in the projections because I mentioned it when we were down in Fort Myers that I was pretty confident that was going to happen. I don't know why we changed it to having him in.
I think we overthought it, put him back.
I don't know.
But anyway. We as a group, and then. Like the other night we recorded, we were going to move him back, and we can't edit the website right now.
The website is not down for the record. We just can't edit things.
No, I know. Yeah,
I'm telling people that.
Yeah. The website is up. It's just that it cannot be changed from the state it was in.
And the forum is functioning too. So if you access that, you're fine.
News page is working too.
Yeah,
it's just the site itself.
It makes sense based on what we saw spring training, and I mean, we'll see what he does there, but
yes,
I think it if you want to get Duran reps, that's the best way to do it. And I just think as you look, there's just too many guys who replace, like Greg Allen also is going to get some time in center field. So they have plenty of guys to play that position in AAA.
They have a ton of outfielders. They have all those guys like Koss and them that are like So I think I counted today. Even if before Duran got optioned, they had 3 legit outfielders and 3 more like utility guys who they could easily get outfield time with. Like that isn't just like
Fitzgerald
scrambling.
basically played a lot of outfield in camp, like things like that too.
Fitzgerald is going to play a lot. Costs, I could see them trying to get some outfield. I don't know how much outfield they're going to get. Hamilton,
I don't think Costs though, because he's actually good at shortstop.
Yeah, but he played not like a ton of outfield in Puerto Rico, and they were getting him some time there in Portland last year, and they've also got middle.
He didn't do any in spring training though this year.
That's true. No, that's true. That's 100% true. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I just think.
I mean, they also didn't get Cedar Rafaela anytime at shortstop in Major League Spring Training, and he played shortstop in the minor league game while we were down there.
Right,
so,
but
I think I'm just saying what they did in Major League camp doesn't necessarily.
But I'm watching. He didn't play any outfield when I was there watching AAA.
I know. I'm just saying it's possible. That's all. So we'll see. And then they do have Durant, so that's another outfielder. So that's 4 legit outfielders plus, whoever they want to move around there. Nick Sogard, I think, even got a little bit of outfield time last year, but he's probably going to stick to third, would be my guess. So, anywho, all right. So we'll see what happens from there. Pitching side,
it's going to be Ort.
Yeah, it's Ort.
It's not going to be Andrew Politi either, even though he did come back to the Red Sox also.
AJ Politi is back.
Oh, AJ, yeah, sorry.
That's. I mean, maybe he backed away from AJ.
I don't know.
Yeah, the Orioles sent him back. So Rule 5 pick return, yay.
It's fine.
Don't be surprised if they keep him in extended spring training for like a week or two to like just work out with him and see where he's at. And
yeah, because obviously it's probably different, like dev stuff. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens.
Keep stock.
As we kind of talked about it, I think we talked about it. Like he was fine in camp. Like it was nothing special. This stuff kind of is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
He is like he's just a serviceable depth arm, and I wouldn't be surprised if he comes up at some point this year. But
no question, I think he'll be up. Well, not no question he'll be up, but no question he'll be a candidate.
Yeah, but especially now that like, I mean, it's going to depend on health, obviously. But I would not be surprised at all that if he did. But I also wouldn't be surprised if he didn't, because it's just like he is there. He's a usable arm. But he's not someone, as you saw why they didn't protect him. He's not someone you're that worried about if, you have to call him up and then DFA him or whatever.
Right. Meanwhile, just while we're talking about it, Thad Ward did make the Washington Nationals, so he's not coming back yet, if at all. He's got to stay up the whole year.
I don't think Ward's coming back.
Yeah, Ward's going to stay there.
Should we mention Noah Song, since we're getting a lot of
Noah Song there's no news. That's
well. So what I'm confused is he's still not on their 40 man. So like,
they still have
like 15 days? Because
they have 15 days from the start of the season.
It's so stupid to me that they get to use this military list thing when they've already said he's quote unquote hurt. Like if he's hurt, okay, then they should have to put him on the DL now. They shouldn't be getting a 15-day window to activate him.
I agree. But, I mean, the rules are what they are.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest, the military list is kind of an antiquated thing. Like, it's not like we're dealing with a draft, or we're dealing with like Teddy Williams joining becoming a pilot and, multiple.
I don't know. I think it served its purpose here because he was literally gone for like 3 years.
It did. But it's also just like, I don't think that they instituted the military list considering draftees from military academies who are going to have service requirements. Like, because the thing is, there are my only point is that there are other lists that they could put him on, like the restricted list. Like, it's weird.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason to have a separate military list.
But like, the way this is playing out, we're not going to know anything probably until next year.
No, next year.
I think they're just going to keep finding injuries and to run it through the season.
I think if we're a month or two in, and he's still like, there's no news, I think at that point the Red Sox will start to agitate the commissioner's office to investigate.
They should.
To raise a grievance. I think they will.
I think Dombrowski is doing a real disservice to the kid obviously.
And I think that's the argument. That's their best argument.
Maybe Song is like, I mean, it's working out well for him. He's going to get a major league salary, like all this stuff.
Yep.
But
no question.
For his development and his future career, what Dombrowski did by drafting him and what they're doing this spring training and having to ramp him up the way they did is a big disservice to what is a very talented baseball player. And I really hope
potentially.
I was going to get there. I really hope that what they've done doesn't impact his long-term future, because like, I really would have liked to see what could have happened if he came back and they put him on a throwing program. He didn't even touch a mound until like, May or something, like actually built him up the way they should have, versus, hey, you're back, let's get you on a mound and see what you look like, which was it's just insane.
That was silly. They don't do that with anybody.
No,
they don't do that with anyone.
It's crazy to me that he got released from the military and like 3 days later they have on a mound. Like, that's just so dumb to me. But I mean, it's Dombrowski doing his thing. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, on Song, I just
don't think it's fair to the kid. Like,
yeah, it's not. I'm trying to think of what.
Like, it's starting. The more I've talked about it with people and thought about it, it really bothers me the ethical thing that Dombrowski did here. And I understand the reason he did it. And I don't think it was just to spite the Red Sox.
No,
I think it's
no
that
question
that he genuinely thinks he's a really talented player.
Yes,
but I also think that, like, you have to understand, like, the repercussions of trying to rush him to get ready back. And it's a very unique case that needed to be taken slowly to ensure something like this didn't happen, even if it is a fake injury or whatever. But
I look
like,
and let me throw this out there. I don't think this is a fake injury, like it's whole cloth, like fabricated.
No, I think he's.
Do I think he's like in danger? Like, this is an injury so bad that he's in danger of going on the 60-day IL, like what has been kind of floated? Absolutely not.
No, what I think it's like, if I tried to throw off a mound after not pitching for 5 years, and I would be sore afterwards. Yeah.
So now,
like, yeah, like if I tried to go and throw off a mound, well, my shoulder would not allow me to do that. But
same.
Let's say, but yeah, like if I tried to throw
worse though.
Yeah, but like, this is gonna yes, he's sore. Like, there's definitely he probably has like back issues because of it, because he's not used to using these muscles, and he hasn't been throwing off a mound for 3+ years. Like, obviously it's going to be a problem. So, like, I think he's quote unquote injured in some capacity. Yes. Do I think it's bad enough that, like, here's my, if he was under a normal progression, I doubt this happens.
Yeah.
Like, if he had built up normally this season, I don't think this would have happened. But
yeah, and I mean, look, it's like,
but it's really been frustrating me the more I've thought about it, like, that they're doing this to him, because I just think it's a disservice to him as a player. And like, if he's fine with it, I guess that's fine. Like, as we said, like, financially, he's probably benefits from this, but
he definitely does. I just think
his long-term outlook, like, potentially, we don't know for sure what's going to happen, could have been impacted and like thrown off course because of this.
We didn't hear how he looked off the mound, right? Like,
no one said anything. None of the Philly beat writers have tweeted any velos. We haven't heard.
I think he basically said that they basically said, like, we didn't even touch a radar gun. We just wanted to see how.
I bet he was probably. I mean, there's no
probably
point
in the
speculating,
80s.
but I was going to say he was like high 80s. Maybe he touched 90 or something. But yeah,
I'd be stunned.
But
I mean, because he didn't do anything. Like, he's even said he did nothing the whole time he was in the military.
Well, no, that's not true. He did stuff. He just didn't do any baseball related activities. Like,
that's what I meant by didn't do anything.
Yeah.
He didn't
do
any
working
baseball.
Out still.
Of course, he's in the military, right?
Yeah,
like, it's not like he got fat.
He wasn't doing like shoulder strengthening drills,
right?
Or, like,
and I guess that's and I guess that's kind of the thing.
That's why I said the ethics of it bother me, but it is what it is. Like, there's nothing we can do about it. So I hope the best case scenario for him is that I hope this gets resolved, and either, like, the Phillies just say we're going to throw him on the active roster and not pitch him, or like, he gets returned to the Red Sox, because like, either let him get paid, or get him back to the Red Sox where they can actually build him up naturally.
Agreed. Yeah, and there's a couple of things left. So the bench, and we had kind of had this internal discussion of, we knew the starting 9. We knew the rotation, at least for the most part. We knew all but like one spot in the bullpen, more or less, because we heard that Zach Kelly had been told that he was going to make the team. Alex Cora had said Josh Winkowski was going to start the year in the Major League bullpen.
I mean, like, with the injuries, though, that Kelly, like, obviously was going to make the team. Like, there was no question.
Once Wyatt Mills went down and Joely Rodriguez was already down, Kelly was a shoo-in.
Yeah, so it's like, I'm sure we'll get to it with the 40-man construction. Like, their options are very limited, so it was pretty easy to project the majority of it.
To some degree, self-imposed, which is a point that I'm really going to want to make. But when you consider and for the context of this discussion, because I know we're going to get asked this, I get asked it on Twitter, and I've been jokingly responding with, I'm not a doctor, I don't know what to tell you. As far as we are projecting this, and as far as what the team has said, no one is a candidate for the 60-day IL, based on what we've heard. That might not be the case based on more recent medical information, right? Like, I have not seen the images from Wyatt Mills's. I don't know if he's had an MRI or what for his elbow, right? Who knows? But Alberto Mondesi, it doesn't sound like he's going to be out. Keep in mind, you put a guy in the 60-day IL, you're keeping them out through the end of May, basically. And if you can get a guy back a month earlier, it's not worth like losing a month of Alberto Mondesi to get like Ryan Sheriff on the roster. Like, that's just doesn't make sense. So, James Paxton, he's always hurt. Okay, great. But that doesn't mean he's not going to get healthy this time. Like, you can't just put him on the 60-day IL and cost yourself a month of healthy Paxton or whatever it winds up being. So we're assuming no one beyond Trevor Story is a candidate for the 60-day IL. The only questions were basically the last two spots on the roster, because today the Red Sox optioned Bobby Dahlbeck, and reportedly Yu Chang, as a result, has made the team, which makes sense because he is now the backup infielder. Presume Rob Refsnyder is also on the bench.
Well, let's talk about that quickly. Just that.
Yeah, because we weren't certain about how that was going to shake out.
I don't know. It just seemed like just because Chang basically didn't play at all this spring, there were some questions. Right. But at the end of the day, this is the right move because it gives him more depth. Dahlbeck starting in AAA is better for the team, and it sucks for him, but he has options, and that's the name of the game.
Yeah,
if you want to keep Dahlbeck on the roster, Chang's gone because he's out of options, and he'd probably get claimed. So yeah, that was kind of the only move. For that spot.
There was one way, and we were talking about this. I don't know where you came down on it, but so the 13 pitcher thing, it is a 13 pitcher maximum on the active 26-man roster. You do not need to have 13 pitchers. It's just the teams almost always, and especially coming out of camp, want 13 pitchers, right? That's basically the reason the roster's expanded. It was that teams could always have 13 instead of 12 pitchers because starting pitchers just don't go as deep anymore into games. But there was a question based on the start of the year, because reportedly Garrett Whitlock is going to make his 2 starts in Worcester on a rehab assignment and immediately
starting opening day in Worcester.
Yep, starting opening day in Worcester. He's going to have to make one more start down there because once he's on the 15-day IL, you can backdate it 3 days before the start of the season if he doesn't play in spring training games, which he won't. But he'll start on opening day in Worcester. He'll make one more start, and he'll come off the IL somewhere around April 11th or 12th. In the meantime, they have opening day and off day, 6 games in a row, an off day, and then 4 games in a row or so before they can activate Whitlock. Honestly, Cutter Crawford I'm going to call him the 5th starter. He's the 4th starter in the rotation because apparently, and this makes a lot of sense, Cora wanted Nick Pivetta to follow Tanner Houck and Cutter Crawford as 2 guys who maybe won't necessarily pitch it that deep into the game, because Pivetta, in theory, can then give the bullpen some of a rest.
Pivetta is exactly what this rotation needs. You throw him out there and he will give you 6 innings, a decent amount of time, and
mostly
it might be 5 runs, but whatever. That's fine for your 5th starter.
Yep. So after Cutter Crawford makes his first start, or Houck, I guess. I mean, I saw a lot of people calling for Houck to be the first pitcher to move to the bullpen. I can't imagine he moves to the bullpen before Crawford.
I'm 100% in that camp.
Really?
I think Crawford is a better starting pitching prospect than Tanner Houck, or starting pitcher than Tanner Houck, in my opinion.
Why don't you explain that? Because I know what you mean,
I'm not saying he's a better baseball player. I think Tanner Houck would be a very good reliever, but in terms of pure starting pitcher, I don't think Tanner Houck's a starter. I think we've seen it over and over again. I think it's trying to fit a round peg in a square hole, or whatever that saying is.
It's usually the opposite, but that works too.
Whatever.
That works.
And he's looked terrible in camp. He got bombed again today. And it's the same thing. It's he'll come out, he'll have a good inning at some point, or a good inning or 2 at some point in the outing, but he can't get into the 5th inning, and there'll be 2 really bad innings as well. And I think to maximize his value, he should be used as a pure reliever, like a multi-inning guy, but as a reliever, he shouldn't be starting anymore. I understand why he's starting, just the depth thing. If it wasn't him, it has to be him. But my hope is that when Whitlock comes back, I'd prefer to see him moved out of the rotation and keep Crawford in there. Houck. Because I just think Crawford has better stuff that profiles in a rotation. We saw him last year have a better stretch than Tanner Houck has ever had as a starter in his career. Crawford, yes, absolutely.
Houck's initial stretch when he came up, he was nails.
Not as good as Crawford. That Crawford was going 6-7 innings, throwing 10 strikeouts. He did that twice, I think. Houck that's not what Houck can do. And I just think that Crawford has the pitch mix. He's got 3 pitches. Houck is a 2-pitch guy. I just like his stuff better in a rotation, and that's why I'd prefer to keep him. And I don't think that's what's going to happen. At the end of the day, I think they're both relievers, but if you're telling me who I'd rather have starting a game for me in 2023, it would be Cutter Crawford. And I'm not sure it's that close anymore, actually.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's one guy's going to come out of the rotation when Whitlock comes back in the middle of April. It sounds like Bayo is not far behind him, and he'll be back before the end of April. So both of those guys, if everyone else stays healthy, are going to be out of the rotation by the end of April. Is kind of what it comes down to. The point I was making is that you could have made, if you are comfortable with a 12-man pitching staff for that initial stretch of 1 game off day, 6 games, you could kick one of those 2 into the bullpen after that second off day. It was possible. Granted, they're clearly not going to go that way. I get why they're not. I wasn't necessarily saying they should. Honestly, what I would do, and which they have said from point one that they were not going to do, is Brian Mata, Brandon Walter, and Chris Murphy are the other healthy pitchers on the 40-man roster, right? You've got the 5 starters, Jansen, Martin, Schreiber, Brazier, Blyer, Winkowski, Kelly. Those are the guys we know are going to be in the majors to start the year. Caleb Ort is on the 40-man and healthy, and then it's Mata, Walter, Murphy are healthy and on the 40-man roster. Alex Cora came out and said, we are not planning on putting Mata, Walter, or Murphy in the Major League bullpen to start the year. I get the reasoning. It's a role they've not really been in before. All of them would be making their Major League debut in that role. It's kind of a lot to ask out of a guy. But that said, can you really not rely on those guys to pitch mop-up work or something out of the bullpen that first stretch? You know, say Houck gets bombed, or even like Kluber, or say whoever, pick someone. They don't make it through the 4th inning. Why can't Chris Murphy or Brian Mata pitch mop-up 3 innings of ball? Get through the order once. Get through the order once or twice. I don't see why they couldn't do that. So, I mean, if you're really talking 12 days, it seems like, Ian, you're unnecessarily capping your 40-man roster. You've already got, because you've already got Wilyer Abreu, who's not a major league consideration yet because he's in Double-A. Now you're taking those 3 guys out of the mix. You're operating with a 36-man, 40-man roster. It just seems like you're unnecessarily handcuffing yourself to some degree here. I don't know what you think. And we'll get to why that matters in a second.
I honestly, so it's tough for me because I don't think Ramel Tapia is that good. Like,
right.
He's at a good camp. It's fine depth, but I honestly, I don't think he's worth sacrificing, changing your entire strategy to get him on the roster. And when they had more healthy arms, it made sense because you could DFA or someone to get him on. But now that they're not going to carry 12 pitchers, I don't see any chance they do that, especially because
well, after what they did today, they can't.
The bullpen has questions already. I've not been impressed by a lot of the guys they've had out in camp already.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
But is he really worth, if you like Caleb Ort, is getting him on the roster worth losing Caleb Ort? I'm not sure they think so. Mm-hmm. And so it's if you don't care about getting Ramel Tapia on the roster, and let's be honest, at the end of the day, Ramel Tapia has been a 0 to 0.7 WAR guy in his career. Mm-hmm. His career high in WAR is 0.7. Last year was 0.2.
Fangraphs.
He's basically the definition of a replacement level player, or slightly better than replacement level. Jarren Duran can give you the same production there.
Less than one career WAR on BREF too.
So why I don't really who cares about I just don't care about getting him on the roster, frankly, is the point I've reached. I think he's fine. If it was easier to get him on, would I like him to be the 4th outfielder? Sure, because I'd like to see Duran get every day at bats. But I'm not going to sacrifice pitching depth for the sake of Ramel Tapia. And that's why I've kind of reached a point where I just I think that they're going to try and get the opt-out pushed back and just figure it out eventually. Because I just it's your 5th outfielder really, because you have Ref Snyder as your 4th outfielder.
Right. Well, it's getting someone from the other side, right? I mean,
right, but how much is that person actually going to play? Not that much. Probably 2 starts a week at most.
Sure.
Yoshida is going to play pretty much every day.
Yep.
Verdugo is going to play pretty much every day, and Adam Duvall is probably going to play most games. With Ref Snyder already, I don't really get why you need Tapia, frankly. So it's like, is he? I just don't think it's worth. Like, I'd rather just roll with Duran for a couple weeks and then try to, if you want to do something, then you do it, or like claim a. I just don't. I don't think he makes a lot of sense on the roster. The more I've thought about it, like I honestly think I don't like how Jorge Alfaro. I don't think he's very good, but he makes more sense on this roster to me than Tapia does. The more I've thought about it, like I don't get why they need a fifth outfielder, basically.
Well, I think it's the handedness because Dahlbeck.
Right, they need a left-handed hitter off the bench, but
yeah.
but do you like?
I think it's matchup options. It's the thing with Tapia is he's been better the last 3 years than he was earlier in his career. He's a decent backup outfielder, and I think the thinking would be that.
He's not though. Like last year, he had
two WAR player over the last 3 years on BREF.
He's never had 100 WRC plus. He was a 90 WRC plus last year, 75 the year before that, 96 the year before that, 74, 79 the year before that.
Right. Like, yeah. I mean, but that 96 year is his. That's 2020.
And that was in Colorado right? Too, so it doesn't even count. Like,
well, and that's the COVID.
Oh, the Super Bowl year. Yeah. No, the 96 was a short year. You're right. Like, he's just not that good a player. And like, what I just don't get what he brings, because against right-handed pitching, he's not going to start over any of the guys we listed. Like, the only situation, maybe against a super tough righty, you start him over Adam Duvall. Like, okay. Like, that's what, once a week? And last year he was atrocious defensively. Are we sure we want him playing center field? I'm not. Like, I just don't think he's very good. And like, for what they need, I get wanting to add a left-handed hitter, but I honestly think the better fit would be a left-handed hitting middle infielder, like someone who, and that's where Mondesi comes in. And at the end of the day, Mondesi's going to be back on this roster likely in a month or so.
The point is, it's keeping a spot warm for Alberto Mondesi.
Right. So why are you going through these hoops to add a $2 million guy in Tapia, who you might be DFAing in 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
Yeah, it sounds like
I think
like
that's
the end of the month.
Right. Okay. So whatever. 4 weeks.
Yeah,
I don't think it's worth going through these hoops to add him, which is kind of what I wonder if the Red Sox are having the realization that's like, why are we making all these decisions to add a fifth outfielder who's going to get 40 at bats this month, at most?
Yeah, and just to be clear, that's the reason this comes up. Is the reason, as it is right now, the Red Sox have a 13-man pitching staff that includes Caleb Ort. Through most of camp, Ort seemed like the next guy to get DFA'd.
Well, we've been saying that for a while, to be fair. So, like,
no, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. I mean, but that, right, that he's the next guy. They clearly
like his stuff. I don't, but like,
Yeah.
I understand there are definitely some traits that are intriguing there. But like, I honestly think that it's more likely that Ort gets DFA'd for another pitcher that they like who get waived by another team.
Yeah, and I think that's for sure. For sure, because I think that there are definitely questions with the bullpen. John Schreiber has had a rough spring.
I mean,
Ryan Brazier is still Ryan Brazier.
Like, the guys who the bullpen is not in a great spot right now. Like, Kenley has not pitched very well in the major league games, or he didn't even get through his last outing. Or did he pitch today? I don't know. But he left that game a couple days ago with heat exhaustion. I saw Chris Martin on the backfields. He looks, he's fine, but like they're counting on him to be what he was in the second half last year, not what he's been for the majority of his career.
Sure.
And so I like the bullpen a lot more if you have Tanner Houck and Cutter Crawford in it, but that's not going to be the case for a couple weeks now. So it's like, I think you have to have a 13th pitcher, and it's, if you trust Caleb Ort, which they seem to do, then that's fine, or go out and get someone off waivers. And if you're doing that, there's just not a spot for Tapia because of the reasons you stated, with all those other pitchers they said aren't coming up, and with the guys on the 40-man roster who aren't really in consideration for a major league call-up right now.
Right. Yeah, it'll be intriguing to see how this winds up working out.
Well, can we talk about Alfaro too? Because I know a lot.
I was just about to say, the other news today is that Jorge Alfaro, who we mentioned had an upward mobility clause, it turns out, I guess the way it apparently worked out is nobody said they were going to add him to their roster. So he is going to Worcester.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
Yeah. And you want to talk about that? Go ahead.
He looks really cool. Like, his hair's sweet. Like, he looks like Aquaman, but with his defense, it's just not a good fit as a backup catcher. Like, I'm not sure he can actually catch. Like, they were watching some spring training games, and his receiving is just so rough. And that's just not what teams look for in a backup catcher. And I think and I tweeted it, when you combine that, and there are a lot of teams who need catcher right now. Like, there's been a lot of injuries around the league. Teams are always looking for depth at that position. And I think it's telling that no one was willing to activate his upward mobility clause, not one team, and pay his $2 million, excuse me, not 30, his $2 million contract. Right. And I think that's the other part is the Red Sox are, I think it's like 4 to 5 million under the CBT right now. Do you really want to tie up like the majority of that in Alfaro and Tapia? I don't. I'd rather have the flexibility for the trade deadline.
Sure.
And so I just, as the more camp went on, it was pretty clear he was not making the team, especially the only way he was making it was if Connor Wong wasn't ready. And
right. It made more sense when we thought he was going to be on the IL to start.
But like he's looked fine. I saw him homer in a spring training game in the backfields. Like he was getting a ton of at bats back there. And
we saw him on the cart going back and forth.
Well, that's because they were playing on the fields that were far apart. But it makes sense. Like McGuire and Wong is just a much better duo to me than McGuire and Alfaro. And but I'm fine. And this is the flip side is Alfaro at AAA is perfectly fine. Like keep him there as long as he's
emergency
willing to play
third catcher.
And if he could come up as a third catcher and like play some outfield and first base also, I like that a lot more than him being the backup catcher on the roster.
Yeah, it's just, and it's kind of interesting to me because I did notice, like I hadn't realized because I think it's JJ Cooper at Baseball America who's been doing kind of an analysis since the one knee catching thing has caught on of like whether it affects how, the point is supposed to be that it's easier to frame pitches, is easier to receive pitches, but it might make it harder to go lateral left, right. There's no evidence that it makes a difference that way. And so he kind of looked at, does it, lead to pass balls, et cetera, or not? And it turned out that it doesn't really. He's found no evidence that it does. I hadn't realized Alfaro was a traditional catcher through last year. Like he did not do the one knee thing. And so maybe the one knee thing would help him. Yeah.
I was saying that he's learning the one knee thing right now, which is tough too. And
exactly.
He's just not ready defensively, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Alfaro now has an opt out if he is not added to the roster by June 1st. So he will at least be in Worcester through the end of May.
That worked out great for the Red Sox. Like they get two-month look at what they have, and then they can reassess then.
Yep. Tapia, if he does not leave, has another opt out on July 1. As does Alfaro, has another opt out on July 1. And then Nico Goodrum has opt outs on May 1 and July 1, which good for you if you want to do it, dude. I just have not been impressed by him in camp. He had an upward mobility clause too, and no one even bothered reporting on it because it's just kind of assumed he's sticking around. He didn't look great. And then the last guy with upward mobility clause, I shouldn't even say opt out. Greg Allen has upward mobility clauses on May 15 and June 15. So those are the guys with opt out clauses in their contracts coming up. So Alfaro's sticking around. He's in AAA. The cat's excited about it. Anything else on the Major League roster? I think that's basically the state of play right now. And like I said, like you said, I think don't discount the taking a flyer on a guy.
I think there's a decent chance that happens over the next few days with one of those spots, but we'll see. I mean,
no question.
It's definitely I think it's changing day by day.
Yeah,
and we'll see how it kind of wraps
up. And again, it's this is not the roster for the whole season, as we said. No. It's changing in 15 days.
I do think the other thing worth mentioning with the Major League teams, it seems like they've settled on a lineup, which is Alex Verdugo leading off.
Yep, that's true.
It seems they were kind of toying with Casas leading off, but I don't think that's actually going to happen. I think it seems like they're going to start him at 6th. And I'm fine with that. Like let Verdugo, he's a veteran, and Casas can he's that guy who he's going to be like the second cleanup hitter almost. Like he's hitting 6th.
It's behind. Verdugo, Devers, Turner.
Yep.
Yoshida, Duvall, Casas. Help me out from there. I think Hernandez is hitting last.
Arroyo, McGuire, Hernandez, or Arroyo, Hernandez, Wong. It depends what.
Yeah, depends which one's catching.
I will say I kind of like Casas hitting behind Yoshida because I think Yoshida's going to be on base a ton. And so I think that could be a good, RBI opportunity for him and Duvall right there hitting 5th, 6th. And it does give Duvall some protection that, Casas is going to hit righties. So,
and look, it doesn't preclude changing things later.
No. So, I'm happy with that lineup. I think it's a good way to start it out.
Yep. And that'll change throughout the year, obviously, as guys get hurt and just as guys move up and down the order based on how they're playing. It's weird. There's upside there and there's downside there. I don't know what to think of this lineup. Like, I'm talking myself into it, but again, I talked myself into Jackie Bradley last year as well. So we'll see how it plays out. It's kind of nice that they do start with it's Baltimore.
They start with some bad pitching stats.
Like Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Detroit, I think is the first 3 series.
Yeah. This is the thing that's tough too, why I'm concerned about the bullpen is they really need to get off to a good start.
Yep.
And that is that's a stretch. I think it's 9 games that you need to go 6-3 in that stretch, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing you want is the bullpen blowing a lead or 2 early on in one of those games, because that is just that's
snowball effect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's gonna be interesting to watch those first couple of games and see how things go.
A couple other news pieces, Ian. The Red Sox acquired their player to be named later in the Josh Taylor for Adalberto Mondesi trade. And by the way, Josh Taylor didn't even make the Royals. He got optioned to AAA.
I completely forgot they had a player to be named later in that trade.
Yeah. Well, they've got 2 more coming too.
No, really? Well,
potentially.
This one, it seems like, is just because Mondesi makes more money than Taylor. That was the only reason I could think of for them getting a player to be named later here. But
maybe, but I'd rather have Mondesi than Taylor.
That's my point. Is I would rather have Mondesi than Taylor in a vacuum in a heartbeat. As we kind of talked about at the time, Taylor's stuff was way down last year. It didn't look good this spring again. And I'm slightly worried that it might be kind of he's in trouble just because of the health. He's just not been healthy the last couple of years, and it doesn't seem like his stuff is coming back. So yeah. Do you want to talk about Angel Pierre?
Because there's not a whole lot
about him.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot to talk about. He was in the Dominican Summer League last year. Looks like he is in Fort Myers now. He's probably going to be.
Well, he's older. Isn't he 19?
Yes, he is 19. Last year at age 18, he hit really well. 300 batting average, 424 on base, 550 slugging. So a great DSL debut for Angel Pierre. That said, we know nothing about him other than he's an infielder.
I efforted. No one had seen him, and there's no batted ball data from down there that I could get. So I don't know.
Well, he also stole 9 bases,
which is not good for the DSLs.
No, he walked a little bit.
I honestly have nothing.
We know nothing.
Nobody does. Yeah, and we'll see. We'll see when the FCL starts up.
Yep. The other, by the way, since I mentioned it, the other players to be named, they in theory might have one coming in the Connor Siebold trade. And I thought there was one more, and my computer's being very slow.
Was there one in the Herman trade?
Yes, I think that's what it was.
I think
the Franklin Herman trade.
I'll look.
No, that was Denlinger.
Reese McGuire. They have a player to me later coming from the White Sox. Oh, no, never mind. That was Taylor Broadway.
Yeah. No, I can't figure it out. Okay, maybe it's just the 2. At any rate, they in theory have one coming from Colorado. That might just wind up being money. But anyway, the other thing that happened, happy trails to 4 minor leaguers. The Red Sox last week released 4 guys from minor league camp, right-handers, Osvaldo De La Rosa, Blake Loubier, Brian Lucas, and infielder BJ Vela. Not a whole lot to talk about with those guys. None made it above low A. Lucas.
Oh, it's Hoy Park, by the way.
Oh, the Hoy Park trade. They have a player to me later coming from
Atlanta.
The one. That's right. Good call. I knew it was one this offseason. Yeah, we actually saw Hoy Park on the backfields while we were there, which was kind of funny. But De La Rosa, relief guy, was semi-interesting for a hot second, snuck into the top 60 for 1 month. Blake Loubier, probably the most noteworthy of the 4, got $500K signing out of the 13th round a few years back. Didn't really pan out, moved to the bullpen, got to low A Salem. Wasn't really working out. Brian Lucas was a depth relief arm at the time he got released, but he looked sort of intriguing for a hot minute in Lowell as a starter to that at the time to eventually maybe be a relief guy down the road, but the stuff backed up a little bit. And Vela spent 2 years in the Florida Complex League, was a backup last year. So happy trails to those guys. Good luck in their future endeavors. I think that's about it on news, Ian. Otherwise, it's just, reassigning guys to minor league camp and optioning guys to the minors. So we'll have more on assignments and that sort of thing probably next episode. The guys that are kind of that are in Worcester right now, I haven't seen anybody that particularly surprised me.
No,
That
and
appears to be there.
the
It's like
Worcester
the
thing will
Shugarts
be
of the world.
right, and it also there probably will be people who won't even end up in Worcester there just because they haven't it's weird
Haven't
that AAA
finalized.
is starting before everything else, so you might
Mhm.
not have finalized if a guy's on the bubble between AAA and W. You kind of have to send him up here just in case you actually do want to put him there. So we'll see what those rosters look like, and I'm hopeful to get out to Worcester for the opening series. So that should be good to see some live baseball this weekend,
Nice.
hopefully.
100%. Nice. Love it. Yeah. All right. So let's move on to camp trip. We were in some combination I should say the length of Ian's trip because he was on the front and back end of the trip. It was Wednesday the 15th through Wednesday the 22nd. So I was down there the night of the 15th through the Monday the 20th. James and Mike are the co-brass of the website. Were down in camp as well. Great trip. Got to see a lot of people. So Ian, how do we want to do we want to go like day by day? Because I don't really want to necessarily go like today we saw this, today we saw this, today we saw this. Do you want to just go like highlights at each level or something? Or how do you want to, what do you think the best way is to go? Maybe go pitching first, then hitting then pitching? I know that the pitching, you saw a lot of pitchers. So maybe we just start with hitters and go from there, just highlights of the trip.
Sure. I mean, I think maybe just talk about a few guys that stood out or
Yeah.
impressed or
Yeah,
something.
exactly. So, you were down there for the longest, maybe from all of the games you saw, because admittedly on my end, just having to poke around, bop around to the backfields, going inside to the park once. I went up on the Saturday we were there to St. Petersburg because the Red Sox sent an all prospect team up to St. Petersburg to play the Major League Split Squad game at the Trop, which I get why they did it because it's a bit of a hike. It seems like they relaxed the whole you need 4 regulars in the lineup rule because of the World Baseball Classic, which makes sense.
Well, it also
So,
doesn't apply for split squad games.
oh, it doesn't. Okay, I didn't even
Literally, I
realize
mean,
that.
it wouldn't be possible more basically to do that.
Yeah,
You'd have to
you would
send,
literally have to divide your
yeah.
roster. Yeah, fair.
So
That
yeah,
makes sense. That makes sense. So they sent an all minor league team up there with the exception of like Josh Winkowski, who started. I mean, I guess should we just start at the top with Meyer and Blaze? I mean, that's
sure.
what people want to hear about. So we got a good look at Marcelo Meyer this time around. I think we probably feel the same about him that we did prior. Is that
Yeah,
fair
I'll
to
be
say?
honest. Nothing really changed for me on the top on Meyer
Same.
or Blaze,
Or
even though
Blaze.
Blaze wasn't very good, but it was whatever. I
Yeah,
don't
he
care.
struggled a little bit. We can talk about that in a minute. Let's start with Meyer. We saw a good amount of him. I got to see him inside the park once. He, drill the ball, but right to the outfielder when I was down near the field to get video. I think I tweeted it. We got a good look at him on the backfield. Feels the position, puts in good at bats, can hit. I love him. I don't know. I don't really have much to add beyond that we haven't already talked a whole lot about. I don't know what else you've got on your notes on Meyer.
No, I mean, there's nothing really to add. Like I saw him for a week in last year in Greenville, and same guy. Like it's impressive. He's a really good defender. He can hit his power. So yeah, I mean, there's like for me with these trips, I feel like the higher rank the guy is, the less I focus on them because I've kind of, especially in the upper minors, I've seen them a lot, and I feel like it's more beneficial for me to focus on guys I've never seen before or
Sure.
have limited exposure to. Because yeah, I just think not a lot is going to change. Like you don't know what a guy's going through in spring training. You don't know what they're working on. Like especially with the older guys who've been through it before. So I just don't think it's as like beneficial to be honing in on them as it is like the guys who literally, I've never seen who are coming stateside for the first time or the recent draftees or guys like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why like, yeah, with a lot of like the higher end guys like Meyer, who I've seen a bunch before, it's just going to be like, I mean, I'm trying to go down the list. Like for the most part, it's pretty much the status quo with all of them.
Yeah,
Not a lot changed really.
Let's talk about Blaze for a little bit because he did struggle a little bit.
Whatever.
Was swinging over some off speed or breaking pitches a
he
little
could
bit,
hit, he
but
struggled with breaking. This is the same as last year. He crushed fastballs, struggles with off speed, and He was chasing a lot. He was also getting exposed to way better breaking balls than he's going to see this year. Like I saw him in a 3-game stretch. He faced Alek Manoah, Sonny Gray, and who was the other? McClanahan. Like,
well, I saw him face McClanahan,
yeah,
right?
right.
Which,
but I'm saying
of course, he's got to whiff
of
against
course,
all of them.
That's not surprising. Like Sonny Gray snapping off like 2,800 RPM curveballs on the backfields. Like,
right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of like with Blaze, and I think that something is you gotta have realistic expectations with the kid. Like he's gonna be 19 years old at full season ball. He's gonna be young. He's gonna be one of the youngest players in the league. I wouldn't be surprised if he's hitting like 180 by like May 1st. Like he's probably gonna scuffle out of the gate because it's gonna be cold. It's his first time leaving. It could be his first time leaving the state of Florida for all we know. Like
in the US,
yeah, a lot of these guys.
Well, he's probably been to Boston.
Yeah, fair.
I think.
But like a lot of these guys, like they're not traveling around the US. Like this is gonna be his first time like going to another affiliate because he obviously didn't go to Salem last
Virginia.
year. Yeah. And so it's gonna be an adjustment. And I would not be surprised at all if he struggles for the first few months. And I was talking about this with someone today, and it's like if he hits like 240 with a 290 to 300 OBP and a 450 slug this year, that's probably a positive season. So, like, I know everyone would hope he's going to go like 300, 400, 500. If he does that, would that
go Jackson Churio?
Yeah, like, could he do that? Absolutely. But if the bar for a guy like him is like, if he goes, 240, like 300 to 450, that's a good season for his development. And so for him, it's just more about, he's got to tighten up his pitch recognition. And I just think that, like, I'm not that surprised that he struggled when we were down there. He's getting exposed to better pitching than he normally would see. And we'll just kind of see what happens in the regular season. But that's the thing. I mean, we kind of talked about with him too, is the question is the hit tool. Like the other stuff is all there when he's given the effort and when showing, and it's just, is the hit tool going to be a 35 to 40, or is it going to get to a 50? And if it gets to a 50, he's a superstar. If it gets to, if it stays down at a 35 to 40, he's still probably a good player, but he's not going to reach a ceiling.
I was just looking at Salem's April schedule. They open at home. They go to they're at Carolina, then they're at home again, and then they have an April series at Delmarva on the Maryland Eastern Shore. That's going to be welcome to the Mid-Atlantic, Miguel Blaze. So we'll see how that goes. Who else? Let's see. Guys that stood out. Any other guys that stood out for you, Ian? Maybe we talked about the top guys. We should mention like guys like Ceddanne Rafaela was in. I guess he was back from Major League
I saw
camp.
him. I mean, he looked.
I saw him too.
Though. Like the same issues that we talked about with him extensively in the offseason are still there. It's just we're gonna have to see what happens when the regular season starts with him.
I actually saw him. We saw him playing shortstop one day, which he didn't do at all in Major League camp. I was wondering if they were scrapping that because he played nothing but center field.
He's gonna play, I think, like once a week there.
Well, that's what he did last year. Yes, he played shortstop exactly once a week, just to kind of keep that, from getting rusty. So he'll keep doing that. He turned in a pretty terrific play when I saw him make an error, which, finish your drink on that one. But I guess maybe high minors.
Well, we should probably mention Nick York because
that's the other.
His stance was kind of a topic of discussion.
Yes, because he changed his pre-pitch setup,
and he did it last year for the AFL, and he had success in the AFL.
Yes,
and I think that it was just so I saw him for a few days, and it was rough. His timing was off. He was really behind fastballs. He had one like notable one as a live BP session versus Chris Troy, who he couldn't touch. Like Troy was throwing like mid to high 90s, he couldn't touch it. But I think that with York, you got to remember is he was coming off he was banged up for a few days at the beginning of camp. He wasn't even playing when we got down there originally. And I think the same thing will go when we get to Roman Anthony. It's the same thing with him. Like he was banged up the first few days, came back, and as he started to get more reps, started to look more comfortable. And like my last day there, York hit a long home run. It's a hanging breaking ball, but still a good swing. So, I mean, I with York's stance, I'm not a huge fan of it, but if it works for him, that's fine. Like we've seen guys have weird stances work. So, that's kind of where I'm at with it is like, if it works for him and he's comfortable with it and he's healthy, and we'll see if it translates in game. If it translates in game, fine. Like that's what you want to see. If he's hitting the ball like we know he can, then that's perfectly fine with me. So I'm kind of the same. I'm in the same point I was coming into camp where we're going to have to wait and see what happens with him in the regular season. Like we're not going to read too much into spring training with him because last year in spring training, he looked really good and he goes out. He had a really rough year. So kind of a wait and see with him.
True. Yeah. When we got down there, he was down with, I think, back stiffness. Another guy who was also hurt, who we did not see play, was
No,
Mikey
he didn't play at
Romero.
all. No.
Mikey Romero was down. I think his was a back as well.
Yeah.
But again, that was just more of a.
And then Roman Anthony was down the
Yeah.
first few days, and he came back, and by the end of camp, he was pretty impressive when he was out there playing with Lace.
He's huge. He's a big dude.
Yeah, he can really move though too.
Yeah.
And he's got some power. So Anthony is super interesting. And yeah, I mean, I guess if you wanted to say like, you want me to go high minors, low minors, or you just want me to say like the field?
Well, just say, why don't you talk about Roman Anthony real quick, because you started on him, because he's the other top 10 guy. I guess.
Well, no, there's a couple more, but
right.
But yeah, he's a big frame, athletic. He's got a good. I like his swing. He's got power and BP. There's bat speed. Like there's a lot to like there. I mean, he had a couple hits like the last day, but yeah, I get what they saw there. That's one of those picks that it's like when you see this guy, you're like, yeah, he got $3 million or $2.8 million. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's very interesting.
Yeah, he looks the part. He was a guy that was good to get eyes on. I did see Romero doing like some fielding drills off to the side. I didn't see
him do anything. So
he was doing some fielding drills off to the side with York when they were kind of working on rehabbing and getting back into it. Looked pretty good. He looks a little more natural fielding the ball than York does. York still. I'm trying to think. Did we see him in the field before we left? York.
I mean, I saw him play the field.
Yeah, he didn't really get a whole lot of chances when I saw him.
Spring training is not a good spot to see like guys in game action in the field because
yeah, I guess they're all working their way back into it.
Well, you also have the situation where guys just don't even run. Like I saw, like Connor Wong just wasn't running out, or I saw Carlos Correa and Byron Buxton not running balls out. Like it's just a weird kind of mix of like guys trying, guys not really trying, stuff like that.
All right, I guess, dude, from here, do you want to talk high minors, low minors real quick, just to because I saw more high minors than low minors, honestly, with the lineup. One guy that stood out to me, Ian, was Emmanuel Valdez. He hits. I really liked every time I saw him, it seemed like he had a couple hits or got on base a couple times in the games I saw him. Still a question about what he's going to do in the field, but again, it's a lot of the same. We kind of knew what it was, but it was just, again, you get to go see the guy in person. He was interesting. And I guess the other guy that I wanted to mention, and then I'll just turn it over to you for whoever you want to talk about, these guys or anyone else. But Wilyer Abreu, getting my first in-person look at him. He was back playing while we were down there. Not at the beginning of the trip, but he came back while we were there. Again, it's, you can see what they liked in him. Has a little bit of pop, can move a little bit.
He's also 5'10", not 6 feet.
This is true. Ian's referring to today, Monday the 27th, on MILB.com. They changed the heights for a bunch of guys, almost all of them going down by an inch or two. My theory is that it's with the coming of robot umps, with robot umps being current in the minor leagues. They actually, they want the heights to be correct because the strike zone is based on how tall you are. So you're going to see a lot of guys lose an inch or two off of their listed height. So that was pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, there's like for me with these trips, I feel like the higher rank the guy is, the less I focus on them because I've kind of, especially in the upper minors, I've seen them a lot, and I feel like it's more beneficial for me to focus on guys I've never seen before or have limited exposure to. Because I just think not a lot is going to change. Like you don't know what a guy's going through in spring training. You don't know what they're working on, like especially with the older guys who've been through it before. So I just don't think it's as like beneficial to be honing in on them as it is like the guys who literally, I've never seen, who are coming stateside for the first time, or the recent draftees or guys like that. So that's why, like, with a lot of like the higher end guys like Meyer, who I've seen a bunch before, it's just going to be like, I mean, I'm trying to go down the list. Like for the most part, it's pretty much the status quo with all of them. Not a lot changed really.
Let's talk about Blaze for a little bit, because he did struggle a little bit. Was swinging over some off speed or breaking pitches a little bit.
He struggled with breaking. This is the same as last year. He crushed fastballs, struggles with off speed, and he was chasing a lot. He was also getting exposed to way better breaking balls than he's going to see this year. Like I saw him in a 3-game stretch. He faced Alek Manoah, Sonny Gray, and who was the other? McClanahan. Like,
well, I saw him face McClanahan, right?
Right, but I'm
which
saying
of course he's going to whiff against all of them.
That's not surprising. Like Sonny Gray snapping off like 2,800 RPM curveballs on a backfields. Like,
right.
yeah. So, I mean, I kind of like with Blaze, and I think that something is you got to have realistic expectations with the kid. Like he's gonna be 19 years old at full season ball. He's gonna be young. He's gonna be one of the youngest players in the league. I wouldn't be surprised if he's hitting like 180 by like May 1st. Like he's probably gonna scuffle out of the gate because it's gonna be cold. It's his first time leaving. It could be his first time leaving the state of Florida for all we know. Like
in the US,
yeah, a lot of these guys.
Well, he's probably been to Boston.
Yeah, fair.
I think,
but like a lot of these guys, like they're not traveling around the US. Like this is gonna be his first time like going to another affiliate because he obviously didn't go to Salem last
Virginia.
year. Yeah. And so it's gonna be an adjustment. And I would not be surprised at all if he struggles for the first few months. And I was talking about this with someone today, and it's like if he hits like 240 with a 290 to 300 OBP and a 450 slug this year, that's probably a positive season. So, like, I know everyone would hope he's going to go like 300, 400, 500. If he does that, would that
go Jackson Churio?
Yeah, like, could he do that? Absolutely. But if the bar for a guy like him is like, if he goes, 240, like 300 to 450, that's a good season for his development. And so for him, it's just more about, he's got to tighten up his pitch recognition. And I just think that, like, I'm not that surprised that he struggled when we were down there. He's getting exposed to better pitching than he normally would see. And we'll just kind of see what happens in the regular season. But that's the thing. I mean, we kind of talked about with him too, is the question is the hit tool. Like the other stuff is all there when he's given the effort and when showing, and it's just, is the hit tool going to be a 35 to 40, or is it going to get to a 50? And if it gets to a 50, he's a superstar. If it gets to, if it stays down at a 35 to 40, he's still probably a good player, but he's not going to reach a ceiling.
I was just looking at Salem's April schedule. They open at home. They go to they're at Carolina, then they're at home again, and then they have an April series at Delmarva on the Maryland Eastern Shore. That's going to be welcome to the Mid-Atlantic, Miguel Blaze. So we'll see how that goes. Who else? Let's see. Guys that stood out. Any other guys that stood out for you, Ian? Maybe we talked about the top guys. We should mention like guys like Cedar Rafaela was in. I guess he was back from Major League
I saw
camp.
him. I mean, he looked.
I saw him too.
Though. Like the same issues that we talked about with him extensively in the offseason are still there. It's just we're gonna have to see what happens when the regular season starts with him.
I actually saw him. We saw him playing shortstop one day, which he didn't do at all in Major League camp. I was wondering if they were scrapping that because he played nothing but center field.
He's gonna play, I think, like once a week there.
Well, that's what he did last year. Yes, he played shortstop exactly once a week, just to kind of keep that, from getting rusty. So he'll keep doing that. He turned in a pretty terrific play when I saw him make an error, which, finish your drink on that one. But I guess maybe high minors.
Well, we should probably mention Nick York because
that's the other.
His stance was kind of a topic of discussion.
Yes, because he changed his pre-pitch setup,
and he did it last year for the AFL, and he had success in the AFL.
Yes,
and I think that it was just so I saw him for a few days, and it was rough. His timing was off. He was really behind fastballs. He had one like notable one as a live BP session versus Chris Troy, who he couldn't touch. Like Troy was throwing like mid to high 90s. He couldn't touch it. But I think that with York, you got to remember is he was coming off he was banged up for a few days at the beginning of camp. He wasn't even playing when we got down there originally. And I think the same thing will go when you get to Roman Anthony. It's the same thing with him. Like he was banged up the first few days, came back, and as he started to get more reps, started to look more comfortable. And like my last day there, York hit a long home run. It's a hanging breaking ball, but still a good swing. So, I mean, I with York's stance, I'm not a huge fan of it, but if it works for him, that's fine. Like we've seen guys have weird stances work. So, that's kind of where I'm at with it is like, if it works for him and he's comfortable with it and he's healthy, and we'll see if it translates in game. If it translates in game, fine. Like that's what you want to see. If he's hitting the ball like we know he can, then that's perfectly fine with me. So I'm kind of the same. I'm in the same point I was coming into camp where we're gonna have to wait and see what happens with him in the regular season. Like we're not gonna read too much into spring training with him because last year in spring training he looked really good and he goes out. He had a really rough year. So kind of a wait and see with him.
True. Yeah. When we got down there, he was down with, I think, back stiffness. Another guy who was also hurt, who we did not see play, was Mikey Romero.
At all. No.
Mikey Romero was down. I think his was a back as well.
Yeah.
But again, that was just more of a
And then Roman Anthony was down the
Yeah.
first few days, and he came back. And by the end of camp, he was pretty impressive when he was out there playing with
He's
Lace.
huge. He's a big dude.
Yeah, he can really move though too,
Yeah.
and he's got some power. So Anthony is super interesting. And yeah, I mean, I guess if you wanted to say like, you want me to go high minors, low minors, or you just want me to say like the
Well,
a
just say,
couple
why don't you
guys?
talk about Roman Anthony real quick because you started on him because he's the other top 10 guy. I mean, yeah, I guess.
Well, no,
Paulinho might
there's
be
a
too.
couple more, but
Right.
but yeah, no,
started on him.
he's a big frame, athletic. He's got a good. I like his swing. He's got power and
Yeah.
BP. There's bat speed. Like, there's a lot to like there. I mean, he had a couple hits like the last day, but yeah, I get what they saw there. That's one of those picks that it's like when you see this guy, you're like, yeah, he got $3 million or 2.8 million. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's very interesting.
Yeah, he looks the part. He was a guy that was good to get eyes on. I did see Romero doing like some fielding drills off to the side.
I didn't see him do anything. So
he was doing some fielding drills off to the side with York when they were kind of working on rehabbing and getting back into it. Looked pretty good. He looks a little more natural fielding the ball than York does. York still. I'm trying to think, did we see him in the field before we left? York.
I mean, I saw him play the field.
Yeah, he didn't really get a whole lot of chances
no.
when I saw him.
Spring training is not a good spot to see like guys in game action in the field because
yeah, I guess they're all working their way back into it.
Well,
too.
you also have the situation where guys just don't even run. Like I saw, like Connor Wong just wasn't running out, or I saw Carlos Correa and Byron Buxton not running balls out. Like it's just a weird kind of mix of like guys trying, guys not really trying, stuff like that.
All right, I guess, dude, from here, do you want to talk high minors, low minors real quick? Just to
sure,
because I saw more high minors than low minors, honestly, with the lineup. One guy that stood out to me, Ian, was Emmanuel Valdez. He hits. I really liked I mean, every time I saw him, it seemed like he had a couple hits or got on base a couple times in the games I saw him. Still a question about what he's going to do in the field, but again, it's a lot of the same. We kind of knew what it was, but it was just, again, you get to go see the guy in person. He was interesting. And I guess the other guy that I wanted to mention, and then I'll just turn it over to you for whoever you want to talk about, these guys or anyone else. But William Abreu, getting my first in-person look at him. He was back playing while we were down there. Not at the beginning of the trip, but he came back while we were there. Again, it's, you can see what they liked in him. Has a little bit of pop, can move a little bit.
He's also 5'10", not 6 feet.
This is true. Ian's referring to today, Monday, the 27th, on MILB.com. They changed the heights for a bunch of guys, almost all of them going down by an inch or two. My theory is that it's with the coming of robot umps, with robot umps being current in the minor leagues. They actually, they want the heights to be correct because the strike zone is based on how tall you are. So you're going to see a lot of guys lose an inch or two off of their listed height. So that was pretty funny. Yeah, Ian, who are some other, whether it's those two guys or who are some other maybe high minors guys who stood out to you on the offensive side? Or defensive, I guess, but the hitters.
I would say the best high minors offensive player I saw is well, it's weird because do you mean like high minors isn't playing down there in the high minors, or high minors is going to start in the high minors?
I mean, take it however you want to take it.
The best player I saw on the AA field was Edinson Paulinho, but he's not going to start in the high minors. He's going to start in Greenville. But he can really hit, and he's tiny, by the way. That's the other thing. Like when you see him take BP next to like guys like Blaze Jordan or Meyer, he's just so thin, and he's probably like 5'8", 5'9", but he just rakes. And like I saw him homer. He just hits the ball hard consistently. It's a really impressive BP round. He looked pretty good in the field. Like I actually think he's decent enough at shortstop. He just won't play there because they don't have like the reps for it.
Yeah, he's playing with Marcelo Meyer. He's not going to get a whole lot of reps at short. But now we can see why he got reps over like Brian Bonacy.
Yeah, he's definitely better than Bonacy. But it's just I think I really believe in the bat, and it's just the only thing holding me back on him is is physical, because he's just so small, and it's like it's just tough that guys like that, just the track record isn't very good. So
it's margin for error, right? Is what it is.
When you're,
like it's not impossible.
If he was I'll say this: if he was 6 foot or 6'1", he's probably a top 5 guy in the system right now. But because he's 5'7", 5'8", maybe he's 5'9", but I think I would guess 5'8", like 170 pounds. It's just hard to put a guy like that high.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, he was pretty impressive. And I think the other bat that I think that people are really sleeping on that actually might be a thing is Philip Sykes. And
Yeah.
Sykes last year, he had a sneaky good year. Like he
Mm-hmm.
started in Salem, which was obviously below where he should have been, but he was 258, 390, 516 there. So that's solid. Went up to Greenville, held his own 250 or 248, 351, 416 slug. So not as good, but still, fine. 23 years old. So he's a little older for the level, but he was just hitting the ball really well. Just consistent hard contact, like some really high exit velos. So I'm at a home run on the big field that was just absolutely crushed. And when you look at like some of his numbers from last year, like his hard hit rate was good. He did a lot of his damage against slower fastballs, which is definitely something you're gonna be monitoring. But yeah, like he can really hit the ball hard, and he's got a decent approach up there. So I actually think he's someone who might have a chance to be more than an organizational player. He actually might be like a bench outfielder type. So he's someone I think has kind of moved up the ladder for me from more of like as I said, like an organizational tier type to someone I'm going to be watching. Is there might be a major league grade there. So he was pretty impressive too. And I think one more person worth mentioning is because I probably get asked about him a lot is Gilberto Jimenez, and
I saw him take. I
he
saw
looked
him take
better.
McClanahan deep
He looked better.
from the right side.
It's still not very good, but with his athleticism, like you got to keep him alive. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not in, but I'm not out. I'll say it at that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's. I'm not ready to say like, oh, he's moving up at all. Frankly, right? I mean, where do we have him? We probably have him in like the
He's like
30s.
40. He should be in the
Yeah.
40s, like or low 30s, high 40s. Like that's
Right.
where he should be.
Yeah, and I think he's not going to move a lot for me, but it's like he's still going to be ranked, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not,
No, we're not bailing
NPing him.
completely. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's there. You keep, like you said, you keep him alive. Is a great way to put it. And it's just funny because he just, he does something like take Shane McClanahan deep when like no one else is really doing much of anything except like Nico Cavadas puts in a professional at bat against him, which like of course he did because he's Nico Cavadas and he puts in a professional at bat, right? But that it's just kind of like one of those things like, okay, now take that and do that every time. Don't do that every time, but just have a good at bat and jump on your pitch you can jump on. Is the kind of thing.
Well, but then he'll just chase like 3 breaking balls in the dirt.
Exactly.
As soon as I start like thinking maybe I'm like getting closer on the meter to getting back in, he'll like swing at 3 pitches that are a foot outside. I'm just like, nope.
Or do something in the field when it's like,
yeah. But I mean, he's got a strong arm too. That's the other thing. Like he's got one of the better arms in the system. So he's yeah. And I'm trying to think of like one thing we should know. Brainer Bonesy did not play at all when we were down there.
He wasn't there.
He had some visa issues. He got into the country actually the day we were leaving. So it seems like those were sorted, but so that he didn't participate at all. Yeah. And then I guess moving down to the lower minors, the hitters, there's definitely a lot more intrigue there for me for the reasons kind of discussed earlier. We mentioned Blaze. I would say if I had to pick like 3 or 4 hitters, and I'm going to take Roman Anthony out of this too because we already talked about him.
Sure.
That I really liked. Number 1 would be Alan Well, not number 1, but the first one.
One of them.
One of them is Alan Castro.
Yep.
He's someone who's been getting some run in major league games. He even popped up on the 40-man roster for some reason. On MLB.com. It's because he played in the major league game.
That's and they just forgot to take him off, right?
Yeah. But I know he had a good year in the DSL last year, or excuse me, FCL last year, 279, 355, 451. Went up to Salem, struggled, but it was like 32 plate appearances or whatever. So
there was that end of the year crew of 8 guys that went up. Yeah.
Not a very large sample. But I think what impressed me the most is that he physically, like he looks the part. He's probably like 6'1", 6'2", like well built. And he can hit the ball hard. Like I didn't go up that day, but he had a ball, like a ringing double off of Spencer Strider in a minor league game when Strider was pitching against the Red Sox when they were up in Northport. And he also hit the ball hard a couple other times when I saw him. And I don't know, I like his swing. I like he's much better from the left side than the right side, but there's definitely potential there. And he's someone that I think could rise if he gets off to if he shows like what he did in camp and kind of continues to improve this year with Salem. Similarly, another player like that is someone who I was kind of out on last year when I saw him in camp, and he went out and hit 340 in the FCL. Granted, it had a 430 slugging, so there was not a lot of hard contact or power there. But Lionel James can really hit, and I'm not sure. Like his exit velos, when you look actually from last year, are terrible, and it's what we were talking about. Like it was a lot of dink and dunk singles, but he's got real feel for hit, and like it's got good bat control. He's got good hand eye, and for whatever reason, just every game you watch, he's on base twice, 3 times. Like he just hits the ball and finds gaps. And at some point, you have to recognize that skill. And like the thing that was encouraging to me is he did hit the ball a little harder this camp than I saw last year. Like he had some hard line drive singles, and the concern is I don't think there's a lot of over the fence power. And as a corner infielder, you need over the fence power. But he's just someone that like I kind of like I'm gonna keep my eye on. He's gonna be ranked for me because I think he might actually be able to hit, and that in itself is saying something. Like you don't see a lot of guys coming over at his age who actually have as much feel as he does at the plate. So he's someone I'm definitely keeping an eye on. Moving down to the FCL level, well, the guys who will start in the FCL, I think the two that really stood out the most to me were Marvin Alcantara and John Fran Garcia. And with Alcantara, he's interesting. He's a second baseman, really can hit, like good approach, looks pretty good in the field. He's not the fastest runner, but there's some ability there. There's some of that quick twitch athleticism and feel that you look for in someone his age. And he's someone I think, I'm not going to jump him too high, but he's someone who, if he gets off to a good start, we get good reports out of the FCL, could easily be pushing the top 20 by midseason. Similarly, Garcia is the same boat, and Garcia is definitely more physical. Like he's a big boy. He's listed at 6'205". I think he might be a little taller than that.
And if I can interject real quick, this is Johan Fran Garcia, the younger brother, not Joe Stinkson Garcia, the older brother, who's an outfielder who like may or may not break camp with Salem.
Yeah, and I liked him behind the plate. Like I can't say that about some of the other catchers I saw down there, especially at the lower levels. And he good catch and throw guy. He's getting like 1.9 pop times, which above average. Hands, he looked pretty good receiving. He's a little big, and my one concern would be he might outgrow the position, but he's got a stick. Like he can really hit the ball hard. I saw like a 106 exit velo. He had a home run off a major leaguer up in the Atlanta
Northport
game. Yeah, off of Lucas Letge, who's like a left-handed reliever. So, and I saw him hit another home run too. Like if you can hit the ball hard and you can catch, that is such a valuable asset. So he's someone to me, just because, especially because he's a catcher, is like firmly on my radar. As like potentially could be pushing the top 30 because of it's just a very rare skill set potentially, and I was very impressed by what I saw from him.
Yeah, I'll mention actually his brother, Joe Stinkston Garcia, who up in St. Pete I saw uncork a couple of excellent throws from right field. I did not realize that Garcia had an arm, but he had a couple of throws. One, there was a failed pickoff that got by the first baseman. That there's a lot of foul ground in St. Pete, so he had to run a long way, and he almost threw out the runner who was going from first to third on the pickoff throw error. If Abram Liendo had picked it over at 30, probably would have had the guy. And then on the next play, there was a sac fly, and Garcia threw the runner out at home with about 3 feet to spare. I mean, it wasn't even close. So I was really impressed by seeing what he did in the field. A couple other guys that were worth mentioning. Nathaniel Uten was a guy who we saw that was interesting, Ian, I think. I heard one guy throw, he looks like, not that he is, but he kind of looks like Yohan Ibar when Ibar was playing outfield. But he just kind of looked like Uten just kind of looked like an interesting guy. So he was good. We had good things to say about Andy Lugo. I remember talking about Lugo down there. He had a couple of really hard hit balls. He was hitting pretty well down there. So Andy Lugo was a guy who he was their Latin program player of the year last year. He'll be in the Florida Complex League this year.
Yeah, Lugo, I 100% should have mentioned. He homered twice in one of the games I saw.
Yes.
And it's interesting because he actually plays all over the field, but it's not because he's bad. It's because he can like handle it. And yeah, no, I liked what I saw from him at the plate also.
Yep. Also wanted to mention seeing Abram Liendo and Luis Ravello playing defense up in St. Pete. They both looked pretty good in the field. Ravello looked really good on a turn on a double play and had another really nice play. I think it was ranging to his right. And then Liendo playing third base, actually, which typically he has played short or second, but he played some third in that game. Made a really nice play ranging to his left, which range from a third baseman can sometimes be really hard to see or gauge just because like there aren't a whole lot of times where they have to range, right? Like it's an opportunities to see it, and he showed pretty good range at that position even. So that was pretty good. Showed a pretty good arm from there. I think that's about it for guys I saw down there on the offensive side. So maybe let's move to the pitching side of the ball, Ian, and maybe I'll just kick to you for this because you saw, I think almost all of the pitchers, or we got we heard about all of the pitchers because, like you said, you weren't in North. We didn't send anyone to Northport.
Well, we could only do really like one. We sent some guys to multiple places a few times, but
yeah, I had to rent a car specifically to drive to St. Pete.
right, but like couldn't do the entire time.
Sure.
Yeah, no, the arms were interesting. There were some guys that there was a lot of the new draftees, and got to look at them, and there are definitely some guys like Dalton Rogers, Noah Dean.
And if I could just jump in, part of the thing too is that usually you will have seen these guys at fall instructs.
Yeah, which doesn't.
But we didn't have that this year. Well, even if they don't exist, like even if you had wanted to go to the fall performance program this past fall, like they
don't do anything. Yeah, they don't play games anymore.
Well, but they also canceled it because of the hurricane this year.
Right, but I'm saying that they haven't played games in a few years, so it's like whatever. So it's not worth going to without the games. But I was impressed. Like the guys they have, like from the draft, especially last year. Obviously, you're looking at college pitchers with interesting pitch characteristics, and I think that the thing that they all share, a lot of the guys, is that the fastball shape, and that seems like something the Red Sox are really emphasizing: the ability to pitch up in the zone, get some carry up there, and show bat missing ability up there. And I think that guys like Dalton Rogers, Noah Dean, Alex Hoppe, Noah Landry, who was a 15th round pick, or Nathan Landry, excuse me, all kind of showed that. Rogers was like 92 to 94 with decent breaking ball. Dean was up to 96, I want to say, with a good breaking ball. Hoppe was up to 99 or 98 with an inconsistent breaking ball, but he was throwing up to 98, and I bet he hits 100 this year. So it's like a really live arm.
We heard he's hit 99 in camp.
And Nathan Landry throws like 90, but it's really good command and very deceptive. And so, like, all those guys are interesting for various degrees. Like, it might not be the highest ceilings, but there's some guys in there I actually think could move pretty quickly, which is encouraging to see because kind of like get some depth rolling through the system with the arms. Other than them, beyond them, I would say that the most impressive pitcher was Luis Perales. It wasn't close, really. Yeah. Like his stuff is so filthy.
Yeah, it's special stuff.
Yeah, and this was the first time I'd gotten to see him because of various reasons. He just hasn't pitched very much.
Yeah,
one of them.
Well, he wasn't in camp last year. He was still in the Dominican.
Right.
Remember?
Yeah. Whatever happened there, but yeah, he pitched an inter squad game and he was like 95 to 97. Fastball really jumps, like really good life, and he'll flash like 2 above average to plus secondary pitches. Changeup is 85 to 88, curveball like 82 to 84. And yeah, he's I go back and forth. Like, he might be the best pitching prospect in the system, but he's just so far away. But his stuff is also so tantalizing that it's hard to like kind of have reasonable expectations for him. Because if he goes out in Salem this year, he could really blow up. And if you had to ask me someone who isn't in the top 100 for the Red Sox who could be by the midseason, it would be him.
It's no question.
And yeah, he was like, I saw Mata down there. I saw Walter. I saw pretty much every other top pitching guy. I guess I didn't see Wilkelman Gonzalez, but I didn't know how he was throwing down there. And yeah, Perales just blows them all away. Like, Mata was good. He was okay. He wasn't good. It's like 95 to 97, same thing. Fastball straight though. And that's the biggest thing is Perales just has so much movement in his fastball. And it's like the opposite of Mata's, which Mata, when he's throwing his 4-seam, is like very straight and flat. Whereas 2-seam, I like Mata's 2-seam better than his 4-seam. But Yeah, I mean, Prowlis just checks all the boxes, and coming from this like high 3/4 arm slot, it's very deceptive. It's just off-putting for hitters. Like there's real upside there. So he was very impressive. I mentioned Dean. He was pretty good. Of the non like draftees, I would say there were actually a couple guys who weren't even I guess they were technically draftees, just not last year. Were pretty good. Chris Troy threw a live BP that was very impressive. He was like 95 to 98 with a good breaking ball. So he's someone who's going to be interesting to watch. And I missed completely. I don't know how that he had like 50 strikeouts in 30 innings last year. So he showed bat missing ability last year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him this year when he probably gets to Greenville. Some other guys, some other pitchers that I was impressed by. Sorry. Can't find my roster, which has all my little notes on it. Oh, it's because I dropped it. Sorry. The other couple of pitchers that I liked were Elmer Rodriguez Cruz. I didn't see him, but impressive reports. Good feel for 4 pitches. He's only like 90 and 91. That's the biggest holdup right now. There's just not a lot of velocity. He's razor thin, but it's really advanced feel, and he's got 3 legit off-speed pitches. Luis Guerrero was good in the major league games, but he also needs to work on his command. But I'm team Luis Guerrero when it comes to stuff.
He got like a lot of run in the major league games.
He's good. I mean, he's in terms of a pure relief prospect, he's the best guy in the system for me.
Mm-hmm.
I would say another guy.
Sorry, I'm looking at her. I'm almost wondering how much of a chance he has to break camp with Portland.
I think I said that he's likely going to break camp with Portland.
Yeah,
I believe I said that.
Yeah,
because I just think he's played so much with the major league team, and he's just moving quickly. He's a reliever. Like get him to double. You're not going to learn much with him in Greenville.
Mm-hmm.
Another guy who was interesting was Shane Drohan. He was up to 94, which is an increase from last year. He's now throwing a cutter too, so he's fastball, cutter, curveball, changeup, and his changeup's obviously taken a big step forward last year. And the one concern is now he's kind of rocking 2 pitches that are designed to throw to righties, but it's a legit 4-pitch mix, and he's someone who I actually kind of like more than like Chris Murphy, for example. Now I think he's got a better chance to start, talking to scouts who saw him. So he's someone who's firmly on my radar. Is they're definitely going to have to protect him when he's Rule 5 eligible, which I think is this offseason. And and I think he's got a chance to push top 10 by midseason if his velocity gains carry over to the regular season.
Which we'll see, because it would not be the first time it happens.
We've seen that before, where guys, they get some velo in camp and then it doesn't hold. And I would say like the last guy I'll mention is someone who's just way off the radar, but is moderately interesting. Is like Jedickson Paez, and the concern with it's kind of like similar to Elmer Rodriguez Cruz is he just doesn't, his velocity is not, it jumped up last camp, but it's kind of plateaued and was the same again this year. He was like 90 to 91. Good curveball, like plus curveball 76 to 79, and average changeup, but it's just hard to project him as a starter with like a 45 fastball.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the biggest thing for him, is he's got to find some more velo for me to project him as a starter. I still like him as a pitcher, but it's just harder to get to get a starter grade when you're pitching with a below average fastball.
Mm-hmm.
But I still like the feel. He's got really good breaking balls, really, really good. So it was a very productive camp, and I'll be writing about more of these guys, or their scouting reports will get updated. We'll make sure to tweet about that and put it out on the news page and everything when those get updated. So if you're more interested on some other names, or more information on these guys, is coming in the coming weeks on the news page and on the website. So check it out there.
For sure. Yeah, I really don't have a lot to add on the arms on that side of things. Because most of the games I was with the major league guys, or I was seeing, like you said, paralysis. Or it's just tough because like at this point you don't see radar guns on the backfield anymore. It's all TrackMan, because the Red Sox have their 2 backfield games at the fields with TrackMan. So the guys are on TrackMan laptops. And if, it's not like, getting behind a radar gun and being able to see velos. So it's tough to see. Did see a little bit of some guys. I mean, it's all kind of AAA major league type guys, nothing to really write home about. So just because we always get asked about him. Durbin Feldman was 90 to 92, topped out at 95. So he's still the same guy. So he'll be in AAA and we'll go from there. Any other news from camp, Ian? I'm trying to think. What did we wind up determining? Did you wind up seeing Ryan Fernandez? Did he pitch the entire time you were down there? No. So who knows what his situation is? It's not clear if he's pitching again or not. Just going through names and seeing if there's anyone else we haven't mentioned yet. You talked about Rogers and Dean. Who did you like better out of Noah Rogers, Dalton Rogers and Noah Dean? Because those are the guys taken in the third and fourth this past draft. College left-handers. They're going to get lumped together. What did you think?
Pretty similar like ceilings for me. They're probably both relievers, but Dean's got a bigger fastball. Velocity-wise, Rogers has better shape. I think Dean, they both showed like, I only saw one inning from Rogers, so it's hard, but like both showed like average 55 breaking balls. So yeah, I think they're pretty similar profiles.
And then did you end up getting any reports on Lou? Because I've heard he's been better.
He was like 95 to 97, but he still nibbles way too much. He's kind of afraid of contact. And he's got a bunch of like fringy secondary pitches. I think he's going to have to move to the bullpen full time, and then we'll kind of see what he is in there.
For sure. I think that's probably most of the guys. Yeah, I'm not seeing anyone else we definitely need to get to. So, again, thank you all for allowing us to go do this trip and scout these guys and do our media blitz while we're down there and things like that. So we appreciate it. And of course, we've got real games coming up soon. So we'll be getting reports from there. Ian, should we go to emails? Check out the email. All right. Well, thank you all for your emails. You can email us at podcast@soxprospects.com. We want to talk about what you all want to hear about, and you have a lot of questions. So we're going to roll through them. Some of them might be kind of mooted at this point in terms of what's happened in Major League camp. So if we don't get to it, and that's why, thank you for sending it. But let's get to it. Our first question is from Danny, who says, this question is inspired in part on the discourse on Blaze recently. If I appointed you all the czars of prospect media, what rules, if any, would you institute to improve how we talk about prospects? I think he's talking about our kind of. I'm trying to think what the discourse about Blaze was. Oh, I think it was the hype coming out of that appearance in Major League camp was the context, where he played in his first Major League game of camp this year and had like just looked really good, and it was all kinds of buzz. So what rules, if any, would you institute to improve how we talk about prospects? It's kind of an interesting question. I don't know if there's anything that's coming to mind for you, but
well, is he talking like us or nationally, or I'm
just generally. So in other words, like Miguel Blaze plays in a Major League game on Twitter, and we have to point out like, okay, yeah, he's 19, he's 3 years away, da. So like, for example, one that I would mention is like, trust us. If there is an update, we will tell you. See, e.g. Noah Song's situation in Phillies camp. If there is an update, we will have it. I think there is.
I would say don't overreact to small samples.
Yep, that's a big one.
Or another one would be don't overreact to like older guys performing at lower levels. Like Nico Cavada's like doing what he did what he's supposed to go and do in Salem. Like that doesn't change who he is as a prospect. So yeah, I would say just like don't be careful of like stats not being backed up by a skill change, basically would be the big one. But
yeah, no, don't hit me with batting average. Might be another one. But you know what? I'll throw it in there. Do be excited about the future. Just be realistic about it. You know, it's fun to get excited about prospects. It's fun to be excited about the future. It's fun to be excited about what a guy could turn into. But like, you know, another one, maybe be careful with comps. You know, anyone whom we were talking about, Edinson Paulino said, but Dustin Pedroia or but Jose Altuve. Yeah, they're the exceptions that prove the rule, kind of.
Yeah,
right?
I would say actually just as a general rule, I feel like we reached a point where every prospect is like the expectations are getting way too high. And like when we're talking about someone like Sinan Rafael, like maybe his swing might look like Mookie Betts. When you say that, it gets lost and eventually turns into, well, he's the next Mookie Betts. And it's like, that's not fair to the player at all. like guys that turn out to be just a bench player just are valuable assets or valuable players too. Like not everyone's going to be an everyday player. Not everyone has an everyday ceiling, and that's fine. There are certain prospects who don't have an everyday ceiling who still are very good prospects. And I think that that's something is you just got to recognize that like not everyone can be a 60. You know, the majority of the system is going to be 40s and 45s. And so it's okay if someone is a 45. It's okay if someone is a 50. It's okay if someone's a 40.
Right.
And just because we say that doesn't mean we don't like them, but we want to be realistic here. And like, it's not realistic to say that, you know, this guy who's like our 25th ranked prospect has an everyday upside or is like a potential like every 60 player. Like if they're 25th, they're probably not going to be a 60. Like there's a reason they're 25th. So I would say just like don't temper expectations. You can get excited about guys, but just be realistic with it. You know, they're their own players, you know, they're not trying to be someone else. They're trying to be their own, like create their own career arc and do everything. So let them be and let them turn out their way. Don't, you know, put the pressure on them by saying that they're the next coming of player X or anything like that.
Well said. Our next email comes from Dave B, who emailed us and says, last year, the two Red Sox DSL squads won a lot of games and reportedly had two talented squads. Looking at the projected FCL roster, aren't there more players than playing time? And he's looking at our projected rosters on, you go to soxprospects.com/2023. That's got our projected rosters right now. Is it something unusual that created this? And how will the Red Sox minor league development folks manage these kids? Thanks, Dave. Couple things I would point out here. One is the current projected FCL roster is everyone who is in extended spring training, we're projecting for extended spring training, who could potentially be on the FCL roster. There will be guys who we list for the FCL right now who get called up to Salem. So, for example, like, you know, there are some pitchers there like Yordani Monegro, who pitched in the FCL last year, Henry Nunez, who pitched in the FCL last year, Francis Hernandez, maybe some of the other guys starting, some relievers, some of the college guys from last year, Connor Butler, Jarrett Goodman, Garrett Ramsey. Guys will go up to Salem at some point. It's just a matter of space. You know, outfielder like Yosemite Garcia, you know, just not a whole lot of room right now. But if Roman Anthony hits his way to Greenville, I can see Garcia going up, right? So there will be guys who get called up to Salem in May or June. So that's part of it. And then some of it, like we put guys into spots right now, but they're maybe not necessarily going to start there. You know, I don't think like Bryant Zayas is going to be the starting shortstop in the FCL, but he's kind of the only shortstop there right now. Maybe Garcia.
Is Angel Pierre shortstop?
I don't remember. I think he's a third base mostly guy. But at any rate, it's going to look different by the time things come around. But, you know, you've got guys like Cutter Coffey and Brooks Brandon are two guys down there who are like maybe on the cusp of Salem, maybe not. So again, it wouldn't surprise me if like Coffey gets called up to Salem, if Mikey Romero gets called up to Greenville or something like that, and Coffey doesn't want
we have Coffey projected for Salem.
We have him there. We do. And part of that is because Romero is injured, and part of that is just it's the 50-50 ball, and maybe he goes up to Salem.
What I'll say though is I think it's a fair point. Like right now we have like 6 catchers projected for the FCL, for example. And it's like the way the Red Sox have it, there's just going to be priority guys, and those are going to be the guys who play the most. And then like it works its way down from there. So there's going to be certain guys who are going to be playing a ton. If I had to guess, like Marvin Alcantara will play every day, basically.
Yep.
You know, someone like Frelia Encarnacion, Andy Lugo, those guys. And so it kind of it works itself out, and it kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier. Not all of these guys are going to get the same playing time in games. Like they're going to get the same off the field instruction and opportunities, but in game situations, there are just certain guys who are going to get the priority and get the majority of the playing time. And, you know, you can play your way into a higher, you know, caliber or kind of like playing time role. But just at the start, that's how it will kind of get situated. Is there will be certain guys who will be the priority players at certain positions.
And there are going to be guys on that list that get cut too. I mean, that's the long and short of it. You know, that's the reality of like, look, you know, the 9 outfielders we have listed right now are not all going to be on the roster when things start up, right? So there will be changes that happen. So that's inherent to it too. So don't get too hung up on like the current projected FCL roster. Specifically, it's more just like showing the guys who are stateside right now who are in consideration for the FCL or Salem. Our next email comes from Joshua. It says, hey guys, so there's been a lot of talk lately about Tristan Casas potentially leading off the season. If that happens, would he be the largest regular leadoff hitter in MLB history? I don't know. I'm going to put the call out to all of you. Find a larger player who had any kind of extensive leadoff experience in the major leagues. Obviously, like atypical body types like Kevin Youkilis led off a little bit. Obviously, he's an atypical leadoff hitter, but as large as Casas, I cannot imagine, just because there aren't many baseball players as large as that. So anyway, just very interesting. We got an email from John B, who said he's got a question about Gilberto Jimenez. Feels like a make or break year for him, assuming the Red Sox haven't already given up on him. I know he just hit a spring training home run off Shane McClanahan, and I know he's a natural right-handed hitter. Even so, Jimenez is 4 years into the switch hitting experiment, and the splits show that the guy can't hit lefties. At this point, wouldn't it make sense for him to just focus on what he's better at, which is hitting from the left side of the plate, which is interesting because I would not say that at all. He's a natural right-handed hitter. I think he just didn't hit at all last year. It's. I think at this point he
doesn't get as many reps right-handed.
Exactly. Exactly. It's weird because the right-handed swing is a better swing. It's just he had a worse year last year because he didn't have a good year. Wasn't playing every single day. He was in kind of a timeshare in the outfield. So what would you, at this point, I think he's a switch hitter. He's going to stay switch hitting. I can't imagine him giving up hitting one way or the other. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, there's no point in him giving up on it now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Next question is from Dajuba. And he asks, he says, I asked about the subject of the email is Odaña Mosqueda. He says, I asked about him back in December, wondering why he wasn't in the top 60 and mentioning that I thought he would be a sneaky Rule 5 pick. Well, that didn't happen, and you didn't think he would get selected and weren't real high on him. Not to say you were down, just not real intrigued. I see now he is at number 48. Has anything in particular about him jumped out to you, and do you see him rising and possibly making it to the show this year? Maybe even a surprise short-term stay on the opening day roster. What's his outlook? I know Mosqueda has been mentioned with Ryan Sheriff as a potential left-handed arm if they want a second lefty.
I think there's a 0% chance Mosqueda's on the opening day roster.
And that's what I wholeheartedly agree. He gets mentioned because that's what they have. Basically, it's him and Sheriff.
I don't think they care about a second lefty, honestly. Like, I think they'd be fine with just Blair.
Right. I mean, I think especially because you're talking about 12 days, right? Like,
well, no, it's longer with not.
Well, it's longer. That's true because we did talk about this. You're right. I mentioned this earlier in the Slack where it's the second lefty stays up until Joely Rodriguez comes back, but then you just wind up optioning guys like Kelly and Winkowski and Crawford earlier because you're keeping a second lefty up. So that's what it is, and it's like, is one of those guys better? I don't know. As far as Mosqueda, I don't think anything changed. I think we said this at the time we ranked him. It was just more of a like, he didn't get ranked because he was a minor league free agent.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, we're not going to prioritize making sure those guys get ranked if there's a good chance they're gone. And then they re-signed him and we put him in the rankings.
And still, even like, there's not a lot of room for him to move up because he kind of is what he is. Like, he's a solid, like, potential situational lefty, like up and down type.
Right.
Like Bobby Pointer, like that type of profile, you're not going to put in like the top 30 or anything. Like, is he a usable arm in the system? For sure. Great depth piece. But I'm not sure he's someone who's going to be like a stalwart in a bullpen for the next 5 seasons.
Our next question comes from Forrest, who says, what do you make of Jarren Duran's last month? Choosing to mostly ride the bench for Team Mexico seems to have cost him any shot at making the team, but do you think he knew he was pretty much a lock to start in Worcester? From a fan's perspective, it doesn't make much sense for a guy in a big make or break kind of year. I don't know what. I guess he's saying going to play for Team Mexico, and by play, I mean be on the roster, because he did not see a lot of run in the World Baseball Classic. I mean, who knows, right? Because now we're talking about the fact that, like, it's going to be really hard for them to get Raimel Tapia on the roster, and maybe Duran does wind up starting the year on the opening day roster in Boston. I think he's going to see a lot of time in Boston, whether it's on the opening day roster or not.
I don't think it was ideal that he went. I'm sure the experience was great for him, but I'm sure if you asked, like, everyone would agree it would have been better if he was getting consistent playing time and at bats, whether it be there or here, just somewhere.
Yep.
But the experience was, I mean, I'm sure it looked like a great experience. Mexico had a great run, And it could benefit in the long term too, like getting around and getting to hang experience, and see the preparation of all those major league bats and what they go through. You never know. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's at the end of the day, it's spring training. It's a few weeks. It might have hurt his ability to make the opening day roster, but it's not going to change the outlook long term.
It's not going to change what the team thinks of him as a player. Like, even if he played well, like I heard a lot of people say, well, Yu Chang played so well at the World Baseball Classic. Dude, Yu Chang played 5 games in the World Baseball Classic.
5 games, yeah. Yu Chang is on the roster because he can play shortstop. He's legit, can play shortstop. He can hit a little bit. Yeah, I mean,
but it's not like it's not like Chang, like and the Taiwanese team played deep into the tournament. He was the MVP of their pod in the 5-game round robin or 4-game round robin or whatever it was. Like he didn't play some extensive amount of games in which he did really well. He played like 4 or 5 games, whatever it was. So, it is what it is. Again, I don't think, we were down there. We saw a ton of World Baseball Classic games while we were in camp, which was great. That was almost as fun as being on the backfields. Honestly, was getting to watch those games with you guys.
I mean, the WBC was awesome. It needs a pitch clock, but other than that, it was awesome.
Yes. Yes. And I'm not going to begrudge anyone taking the advantage of getting that opportunity, right? Like,
no, I mean, I'm hopefully the next one in 2026, there's even more participation.
Our next question comes from Daniel, and he says, not sure this is a great question for you guys, but I haven't seen anyone talk about it anywhere else. There were questions before Trevor Story's surgery about his ability to adequately throw from short. When Story comes back from his surgery, do you expect it will be as a shortstop or as a second baseman? Would this type of surgery put him back to where he was pre-2021 when he was one of the best defensive shortstops in the game, or will he be a second base only now? To tie it to prospects somewhat, given the pending free agency of Kike Hernandez and Alberto Mondesi, who I definitely almost called Raul, after the season, as well as the proximity of York and Meyer, if they have good seasons, do you see Story's ability to play shortstop tied to the time frame to the majors for York and Meyer? Thank you again, Daniel. Not sure why York is in there because York is second base only. Maybe, I guess, being if Story can play short, then there's a second base spot open. But just on Story, I think the answer is we don't know medically what it is. It's worth noting that it does seem like the plan this year was for Story to play short. That seemed really clear before he had surgery.
Yeah, so, I mean, I would assume he'll come back as a shortstop, but it's impossible to say what his arm is going to look like until he starts throwing again.
And our last question is from Steve, who says, greetings, gentlemen. Max Cerullo had a piece this morning talking. Oh, by the way, Max Cerullo, congratulations on joining the Boston Herald from the Eagle Tribune. Another Eagle Tribune alum moving on to the Boston beat from a Boston paper. Anyway, Max Cerullo had a piece this morning talking about a return to Moneyball, in which the Red Sox team to have reprioritized on-base percentage this offseason, swapping Casas for Dahlbeck, Yoshida for Tommy Pham, and Turner for Martinez, among other changes. Separately, much was made of this offseason's additions to the bullpen, specifically their ability to throw strikes. Chris Martin and Kenley Jansen are very different pitchers, obviously, than Jake Diekman or Hirokazu Saramura. So my question is, do you believe these are just reflections of what was available on the market at the time, or do you think it's more of a conscious decision on the part of the club to change course? I ask because if it's the latter, this offseason can be read as something of an indictment and repudiation of the approach taken in past offseasons if they're swinging wildly between extremes, as it really begs the question as to whether the front office has a plan. Any thoughts appreciated, Steve? Fair question, honestly, I think, Ian. I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's you're getting the best hitters available. I don't think that they decided, like, you know what we need? OBP guys. But I also don't think that they didn't look at what didn't work in the past and say, like, maybe some guys. I don't think it's OBP so much as a better approach.
I do think, though, that they took from last year having the free swingers and everything, and it's just they knew it wasn't working. And I think that they did put an emphasis on OBP or guys who can get on base because they just, as we talked, like last season, their offense was good, and that was with guys who just their approaches were bad.
Yeah.
And
remember, they didn't see pitches.
Yeah, no, they didn't at all. And I think that they're trying to go back to more what it was like the year before when they got to the ALCS, like guys like Schwarber were, putting together really quality at bats. Even if you get out, if you're making a pitcher work 6-7 pitches, that adds up. Mm-hmm. And I think that, that was something that they were looking for. And I think I think you're right. It's also how the market played out. Like based on the timing of when they signed some of these guys, I don't think they were priority one. Like, I don't think they went into the offseason necessarily thinking that Adam Duvall was their number one target. Like, there's a reason he didn't sign until, what was it, January or something?
Oh, I mean, their number one target was a guy who is part of the Free Swingers group that walked to San Diego. Bogarts. Like, he's not a guy that saw a ton of pitches.
Yeah, fair.
You know?
But no, I was talking about for center field. I thought you were saying for center
field.
No.
I
was trying to rack my brain to think of who else they were linked with.
Mm-hmm.
Who they actually, like, if there's anyone, like, because, like, we know for pitchers they were actually linked with Zach Eflin they were very interested in, and Andrew Heaney they were interested in.
Yeah. I think they weren't interested. They weren't linked to center fielders because they needed a center fielder because Kike Hernandez had to move to the infield.
Yeah, that's true. That happened really late because that was when Story got hurt. You're right.
That was when Story went down.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think for the pitchers, I do think that it was a conscious effort to get guys who could throw strikes, because I think last year the walks at the bullpen were unacceptable.
Yeah.
But I also think, though, that they showed, like, with Joely Rodriguez, it wasn't like, it's not a one size fits all approach or like one glove approach. Like, you know, it's they're with their bullpen, they're looking for certain traits or characteristics. And I feel like it's, if they could find guys who also are really quality strike throwers or, you know, good command guys, that's a bonus. But, like, the fact that, you know, like someone like Caleb Ward is still around. Caleb Ward doesn't have a very good command, but like Joely Rodriguez doesn't have good command. So those guys are stuff guys. And I think, though, that I kind of do agree with the approach of you need a mix of stuff guys and command guys in your bullpen.
Yes.
I don't think having, you know, a full bullpen of one or the other is the way to go. I think you need a mix of both.
Yeah, you need a guy who you're comfortable bringing in with the bases loaded, who's not going to walk the guy.
That's why I like the Rodriguez Blyer combo. Like, Blyer is your guy that you throw out there. You're like, we need a strike, we need a ground ball, weak contact. Blyer, go get him.
Yep.
We need a strikeout. Okay, Joely Rodriguez, go try and get him. Like, that's why I like that. I think they complement each other really well, and I think that was what they were going for too with the right-handers. Like, you have Chris Martin, who's a guy who throws a bunch of strikes. Then you know you have maybe a more of a stuff guy like Brazier, kind of like or guys like that. So yeah,
stuff guys. I guess that's that's one term to use for those guys.
What they are. I mean,
no. I know. I'm not making fun of you. I'm just saying it's like, I guess that's one justification to keep them around.
That is what it is, though. Like, they like their stuff.
It's fair. It's fair. Again, I'm not scoffing at you by any stretch of the imagination. You know, Caleb Ward, we'll see how long he's around. It'll be like 12 days. So anyway, all right. Yeah, but thanks for the question. I mean, and I think part of it too, Ian, is it's like you're comparing Kenley Jansen and Chris Martin to two guys who were like middle relievers, right? Like, I guess they got Diekman to be like a setup type guy. So I mean, maybe there's a comp there between him and Martin, but
like last year they had like guys in the bullpen. They had like Diekman, they had Sal Moore, like they had a Robles, they had a bunch of guys who just don't throw strikes at all.
Yeah, Robles is probably the better name than Salomore, because Salomore at that point was even middle reliever.
Or it's not going to get DFA'd in 11 days. He's just going
to I'm saying he's going to get options.
Oh, okay,
yeah. I'm saying he's not going to be in the major league bullpen. No, fair. I'm saying he's going to get sent down. Like, he's clearly the guy that you send down when Whitlock gets activated.
Well, not necessarily. I think it'll come down to who of him or Kelly is pitching better or worse.
That's true. Okay, fair. Yeah,
like, I don't think it's a given, but
that's true. That's very true. That's true. So, they both got options. But then, like, the other one's going down when. Well, again, at that point, maybe it's like you want to keep too long.
Like, how is Brazier pitching? Do you want? Yeah, exactly.
What's but at that point, because you've got Winkowski in there, and like Crawford's getting kicked. Well, Crawford or Houck. We'll see which one of them gets kicked to the bullpen, like we talked about. So okay, fair enough. And that is it. So again, podcast at soxprospects.com. Hit us up. We want to talk about what you all want to hear about. So send us an email. We might read it on the show. And with that, Ian, I think we will wrap it up. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for your support again. Tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell a cousin about the show. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever it is that you listen. Hit us up with emails again, podcast at soxprospects.com. Support us on patreon.com/soxprospects. And as always, we like to shout out some of our $5 level tiers, $5 tier level supporters. This week, we want to thank specifically Jim Tuttle, Brian Rose, Jake O'Donnell, John Mulqueen, Gerardo Iantosca, Sean Guinan, Kyle Sanborn, Matthew Ware, Alex M., and Jay Harrington. Thank you all for your support. Twitter, you can follow the site at Sox Prospects. You can follow Ian at Ian Cundall. That's INCUNDALL. Follow me at SP Chris Hatfield. You can also follow the site at Sox Prospects on Instagram. Follow our account there. I think that's about it. We'll be back in your eardrum soon with some Ian, some regular season stuff. It's almost here. Cannot wait. Till then, thanks for listening. We'll be back in your eardrums soon.